All right, guys. Hi there. Welcome to our March chapter meeting. We are the Southeastern PA chapter of Wild Ones. It's great to see so many new and returning faces. One of these days, we'll actually get to see a little bit more in person. I am having everybody mute for now in case you're like me and you have dogs that just want to decide to bark whenever you're not paying attention to them. Since our last meeting, we've had 10 new members, which is very exciting and brings us up to 122 members in our chapter. Now, that number is a little misleading because we've had new chapter seedlings start up. So some of our members are being transitioned into other chapters. So we probably were up over 130, but we've had some redistribution. So we're doing great. We even had a new seedling over in New Jersey. So some of our New Jersey members may move over that way then. In case you are new to our meetings, I'm Jessie. I'm the chapter president. I put the email address up there, the 2 email addresses you might need for the chapter. Audrey is our vice president. She takes care of our thoughts of the month and our tree of the month, and in all ways is helpful. Susan is here tonight with us. She's our secretary and webmaster. So the things that you see on our Facebook page and our website are amazingly done by her. I don't know how she does it. And she puts together the most beautiful newsletter for us. So after the meetings, you will receive an email of our newsletter that has all of our highlights and just a lot of extra really great information. All thanks to Susan. We have a volunteer who has said they'd like to be our treasurer. We just have to, as a board, get with her, make sure we're all on the same page and that she's a great fit for that. So that should be evolving shortly. Our membership chair is Lindy, and she reaches out to new members or people who are interested in the chapter and gives them information about that. Marilyn advises us on all things native plants and just kind of tells us how the chapter was years ago when it was a thing, so that we know that we're growing and that we're on the right path. And then we thought that we had a community projects committee chair, but we actually figured out that she might fit a much better role that she's much more passionate about. So we are still looking for a community projects committee chair. If you have interest in that, that person is the liaison between the board and members who have projects that they want to do. So we are working on developing guidelines and an application process for people who want to do projects through Wild Ones and get granted plants through Wild Ones funds. So the community projects committee chair would go over that application with people, make sure that their projects are a good fit for Wild Ones funds, and go from there. We also have our YouTube channel. So if you ever miss a meeting, check out our YouTube channel. The links come out in the newsletter, but they get uploaded within a few days. Sometimes it's as quick as a day or two. Sometimes it takes a week. It depends what's going on in my life, really. Our website, this is where you can find us, sepa.wildones.org. Funny thing, Susan, I don't know if I mentioned to you when we put all of the seed packets together for the tabling events, the period is missing. It's sepawildones.org on all of those printed labels. So
I thought we fixed it. Oh no, I thought I fixed it.
We did, but what went to the printer apparently didn't. So I got to handwrite sepa.wildones.org. I would never ever forget that. Like I did it like 400 times or something. So
do it 100 times like they used to do, right? I
had a lot of help with it too. So that's where you find us, sepa.wildones.org. Our new member shout outs, when people join, we send them an email that tells them all about our chapter. And I'd like to let people know where our new members are in case you are in the same town or in a nearby town and you want to work with another member in the chapter to do projects in open spaces in your community, so that you know that you're not alone. I am amazed. I think this is probably the first month that we didn't have somebody from Phoenixville join. I don't know how that happened. Phoenixville is quickly becoming our most heavily populated Wild Ones member base, but it's great to see that we are spreading out also. So lots of great places that are now having Wild Ones members in them. And Josh Lowe is the person who started up the South New Jersey seedling chapter. So I haven't gotten a chance to see if our New Jersey members are from Northern or Southern New Jersey, but they will move if they need to. I wanted to just show, and this is super blurry and I apologize, but it kind of shows how PA is broken up according to we are southeastern PA. You can see the counties that are covered in our area versus some of the other areas. Now, we don't have a North Central Wild Ones chapter, and North Central is actually pretty well covered by the PA Native Plant Society. They're pretty heavy in that area, in the college, what's it called? Penn State area. So they cover that section very well. And then our member Ed, who started the Pittsburgh chapter, kind of covers all of Western PA. So those two are a little bit merged, but there's always room for more chapters. Audrey, are you on with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome, Audrey. We are going to move into the thought of the month. I'm really excited to talk about this topic, living in harmony with carpenter bees. Would you like me to show the video first, or would you like to talk first?
I am going to give some background first on bee and carpenter bees, and then we can do the video, if that's okay.
You cue me whenever you're ready.
All right, thanks. So our thought of the month was inspired by the Philly Home and Garden Show. And if anybody is listening tonight who was there, I just want to say I had the best time talking to all of you guys. I mean, you just amazed me with all of the projects that you're doing and all of the knowledge that you have. It was so cool. On Sunday, one of the questions that I got frequently was, what do I do about carpenter bees? I don't want to kill them, but they're destroying my house. So I had really no good answers except leave them alone, because that's what I do. I think they're super cool. I love when the males kind of like buzz in your face. They're hysterical. So I just leave them. But there were a lot of people that actually have significant damage to their homes from them. So I went and looked, and hopefully give you some better information tonight. So first, I just want to give you a little bit of background info about carpenter bees. And this comes from Penn State Extension. So we know that carpenter bees are very important pollinators. They look a lot like bumblebees because they're about the same size. But carpenter bees have shiny abdomens, whereas the abdomens of bumblebees are fuzzy. Carpenter bees have distinct black circles on their thorax. Bumblebees are social, living in colonies underground. The eastern carpenter bee is less social and nests above ground in cavities they create in wood. In fact, their name is Xylocopa virginica, which means woodcutter. They chew perfectly round holes in the wood with their powerful mandibles. They construct durable homes that can be reused over many years. The female bee excavates a series of tunnels with chambers for her young. She uses the wood shavings to create walls between the chambers. Within each chamber, she lays an egg on a ball of pollen and nectar that she collected. The egg will hatch into a larva and eat the pollen ball, which is its only source of food. Carpenter bees often nest in small groups and use the same nest year after year. It takes a lot of energy to make a nest, and it decreases the number of offspring a female will be able to produce in her lifetime. Carpenter bees who defend an existing nest have more time and energy to devote to raising their young. Adult bees overwinter in their nests. In Pennsylvania, bees begin foraging in April and May. They construct nests in spring. Foraging continues through summer, so that by the end of July, they will have pollen balls for the larvae that will become adult bees, which emerge in August. Males are defensive and territorial, but they cannot sting. They can be identified by the white markings on their faces. Females will defend their nest and themselves, but only sting if threatened. Carpenter bees are primarily attracted to pine and cedar lumber for nest building. So placing pine and cedar somewhere in an undisturbed area of your yard might be a good way to keep them in your yard, but not near your house. Also, applying paint or stain or almond or citrus oil may deter bees from building new nests in this wood, but these approaches do not deter bees who have already made nests there. So that is where our little video comes in. This popped up when I was researching, and coincidentally found out that the lady who made the video is from southeastern Pennsylvania. So I thought it was appropriate, and Jesse, you can share that whenever you'd like.
I'm just going to share that the two bees on the left and right of this screen are visitors in my yard. So I was excited to catch them in action. And then the little guy in the middle is from the video. Let's have that start. I think that they're.
Hi, I'm Nicole Hockley from Sandy Hook Promise. I know this is hard to hear, but it's important.
Okay.
During the first sunny days of April, the eastern carpenter bees begin to emerge from the nests where they have spent the winter. The females build the nests. They prefer pine and cedar to drill tunnels parallel with the grain of the wood. The females have the ability to sting, though during the past 18 years while living under the eaves of my porch, no one has swatted or threatened them, and they've harmed no one. The males can be identified by a white spot on their face. Though they can't sting, if you get too close to the nest entrance, they may buzz around you aggressively. Originally, the underside of the porch was stained. I read that the bees won't drill into painted wood. I found that not to be true. I've also read that hornets are an enemy of carpenter bees. I built a nest and put it at the eaves of the porch. Initially, when I put the nest up, they did hover around and seemed to be examining it, and some of them moved to the eaves of my shed about 30 feet away. So the jury's out on whether or not this will deter them from nesting. I've read that they don't like the scent of almond oil. I painted some of that around the entrance to their tunnels that they made on my shed, and they continued to live there. The almond oil didn't have much scent. I bought some concentrated bitter almond oil, added it to the almond oil, and painted around the entrances. No luck with that either. Maybe my female carpenter bees are lazy. I drilled half-inch holes in blocks of wood and put them under the eaves of the porch. Success, a win-win for both me and the bees. I'll wait for a sunny spring day while the bees are out flying around and mating to seal the holes in the porch wood. Timing is important when sealing old holes. Do it in the early spring when they first emerge and before they start to lay eggs in the nests. The other time to seal the holes is in the fall after the young bees have left the nest. but before the adults return to spend the winter inside the nests. I live in southeastern Pennsylvania. If you live in a significantly different climate, you'll need to adjust the timing to your location. Now, off to getting that skunk to move out from underneath my shed. I hope you found this video helpful. A thumbs up is
Hey.
Okay, so just real quick before we move on to the tree of the month, I just wanted to note that Susan will be sharing the link to that video. If you want to watch it again, take notes. Also, there are comments that you might find helpful. So again, that link will be in the newsletter, Susan, I guess, or you put that on the website, either or both. And I hope that that was helpful because I had several guys tell me that they were going to send me the bill for their new deck. So hopefully that discourages the nesting on their decks. All right, Jesse, whenever you're ready, we can move on to our tree of the month, which is Prunus serotina wild black cherry. Black cherry trees are native to the eastern half of the United States. They are a top keystone plant with about 340 species of caterpillars using plants in the Prunus family as a host plant. Other species in the Prunus genus include American plum and chokecherry. The North American Butterfly Association stresses the importance of black cherry as a caterpillar food source, citing eastern tiger swallowtails, red spotted purples, and coral hair streaks among the butterflies that lay their eggs on wild cherry trees. Black cherry trees are fast growing and like full sun and well-drained soil. They have moderate drought tolerance. Their average height is 40 to 80 feet with a spread of 30 to 50 feet. They bloom in mid-spring with white, fragrant flowers that hang in clusters and are insect pollinated. Leaves are oblong and serrated and a rich green with a leathery texture. Fall color is yellow and red. Bark is smooth when young, with fissures opening up with age. Saplings have smooth and shiny reddish bark with horizontal raised lines called lenticels. Bark, stem, leaves, seeds, and roots, when crushed, smell faintly of almonds due to the almond-scented cyanogenic glycosides that produce cyanide that, when ingested, can prove fatal to some animals. That's why there's a warning for livestock. Black cherry fruits are small and bitter, so not a primary human food source, but Jersey Friendly Yard says fruit is used for making wine and jelly. Birds, however, love the berries, which start off red and turn black over the course of the growing season. Cherry trees often become infested with tent caterpillars, but this just provides more food for birds. Deer resistance, Susan, I'm afraid, is none. This is a very valuable tree for wildlife, however. Fox and bear also enjoy the fruit. Squirrels, turkey, mice, voles, rabbits, raccoons, and the possum. Some companion plants for black cherry: sassafras, red maple, sugar maple, tulip poplar, American elm, American hornbeam, American holly, loblolly pine, eastern white pine, oaks, and hickories. And just a little side note, we had a great big black cherry growing right up against our house. Unfortunately, we had to keep pruning the branches that were right up against the house, otherwise they would have gone through the windows. And this caused it to be really heavy on the one side, and it uprooted after, some really wet weather. So we were really bummed about that, having to take that down. But like one season later, I now have like 7 or 8 saplings in, an area really close to that, and they are growing like wildfire. So I have like a grove of them that I did not even plant. So very easy to grow. I did nothing, and they're there. and they're thriving. So good plant for wildlife. And that wraps it up.
That is awesome, Audrey. Thank you so much. So on the first screen, I had this little caterpillar, and I don't know if you noticed him, but I think maybe a unicorn moth caterpillar, or it's some type of a prominent. I am not great at my goofy caterpillar identification, and this is one of the goofy ones where he is trying to blend in with the edge of the leaf. That's why he's got like the brown splotch and the green. When you look at him at the right angle, he blends right in. It looks like just a chewed on leaf. So it was really exciting when I found this on a little black cherry tree that we had planted the same year. So it's very exciting to see him. Next, okay. So our financial report is, because we don't have a treasurer officially yet, is our balance is $993.04, and we should be getting another dues reimbursement sometime in the next month, I believe. From last month, our expenses were to pay for labels and seeds for the tabling events. Fun fact, our credit card, or our debit card had been hijacked somehow, and there were some fraudulent charges, and I got a phone call while I was at work that asking me if I made these purchases, and I was like, no. So they shut off the debit card. I had to go through a fairly easy process to get the charges refunded, which that has been taken care of. We got a new debit card activated, but that was a fun few days of figuring all that out. Somebody purchased something on Facebook Marketplace, so I hope they liked it, I guess. And then our upcoming purchases, we will have to pay for the plants that we have ordered for some community projects. And we made a purchase for envelopes and a carpet for the home show that will be reimbursed. So we have a couple of things the treasurer will have to tidy up then. But this says the position's filled. It's not quite filled, it's almost filled. Just some things to take care of on that end, but hopefully it's filled. Our community projects, we are still trying to do a project at the Schuylkill Elementary courtyard for the student memorial at an elementary school in Phoenixville. We're thinking we need to change locations from the outdoor classroom to this site. So we're still working on figuring all of that out. And we have a prospective project at Reeves Park at their pavilion there in Phoenixville. We're still working out the details of that. We are working on an official grant application. So when members have a proposed project in their community that they'd like to receive help with, in the form of granted plants and education for wildlife-friendly, ecosystem functioning native plantings, that they'll have guidelines to follow. So several of our members from Phoenixville and their friends have committed to the installation of these projects and the initial maintenance. And then if afterwards, it will be the organizations in the community that need to continue with that maintenance. It's not a Wild Ones long-term goal to be doing maintenance. We want to help you get started. We want to educate you on the best way to do it. We want to get the plants in the ground, and then we want you to take ownership of it in your community. If you're interested, if you're in the Phoenixville area and haven't heard or haven't volunteered to help with these projects, reach out. We will put you in contact with the right people and get you on the wanting to help list. Some of the biggest news from last month, our plant sales have to be public now. So that's very exciting. So a few changes have to be made with that. Our North Creek order, you still have plenty of time. Check out the inventory. Let Susan know at that secretary email address which flats you would like. It's whole flats. You don't have to be a member. Anybody can do this. If you are not a member though, there's a $10 fee per flat to be able to take part in this sale. It's a great opportunity because otherwise you're not really able to access bulk pricing on plants. And this is a great way to get a lot of the projects that we want to do out into the community done by getting these small plants at a great price that we can put more plants in the ground, which is our ultimate goal. So this slide has all of the information on it. All of the information will be in our newsletter. If you have questions, reach out to us. I'd had a couple of people reach out last month asking if other organizations that they were a part of would be able to take part in this plant sale. And at the time, before we had to be open to the public, the answer had been like, I think so, but let's work it out. And now the answer is yes. Anybody can do this. We will get it figured out for you. You pay for the flats and we will work on the details. So please take advantage of getting all these great plants in the ground. Erin, I would love you to speak, and then when you're done, we're going to have our main presentation start. So if you are ready to share, I have this slide that you sent, this picture that you sent me to get you started.
Yeah, so I'm not a very good public speaker, but basically what happened is I saw this graphic on one of the larger backyard pollination native plant sites. And I think it was Leslie Nelson or something, Leslie Inman Nelson, I think, had created it. And it struck me as being very, very good and eye-catching. And so I contacted Shannon and I asked Shannon if she would be interested in trying to create a corridor between my house and her house. And she was. So I posted about it, not really expecting a huge response. But we got a decent response and I'm really just thrilled. So I decided to turn it into a Facebook page because I couldn't do polls and other things on somebody else's page. So we have about 20 people, maybe more, who have signed up. I'm trying to create a map for them. I created one, but I don't think it's really what I want to ultimately use. But people are really eager to do something fun and light. And so seems like a good time. So Leslie also, I contacted her. She was fine with me using the graphic and is very happy about what I'm doing. So it just was more like something fun to do and to try to reach out and see who's interested in my community.
So happy that you've had such great success, that so many people are into this. I definitely want to see pictures as your corridor grows. And I think that now that our sale is open to the public, all of the people on your corridor should probably get a flat of plants so that you can put a whole bunch, and then you can mix and match and share and have lots of great pollinator plants that serve lots of functions, not just for pollinators. But what a great way to educate those people around you and make a bigger difference, because you're creating those corridors. It's what everybody needs.
Yeah, and I think they just need something to enjoy right now. And who doesn't enjoy butterflies? So yeah, I was hoping I could get maybe some input from you guys about which plants to recommend. And we were thinking maybe just starting people off with like 4 or 5 different plants that would bloom all season. So I was hoping to get some input from this group.
Yeah, we can definitely chat. Like, if you have time afterwards, hang around. Maybe we'll get some time for discussion and brainstorm a little bit.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so much for sharing.
Thank you.
And now on to our main presentation for the night. Kelsey Mummert, are you with us, Kelsey?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Excellent. Yes, I can hear you. I'm
Excellent.
going to introduce you, and then I will stop sharing my screen. That way you can share yours. Kelsey coordinates the lawn conversion program at the PA Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, DCNR, Bureau of Forestry. As part of the DCNR watershed forestry team, she is responsible for coordinating partners, funding opportunities, trainings, and educational resources that aim to convert lawns to forests and meadows. She combines her passions for stewardship and helping others to provide a program that enables Pennsylvanians to make a positive difference across the landscape. Kelsey lives in Carlisle, PA with her husband Ben and their meadow-loving terrier Badger, and enjoys creative pursuits and caring for natural places. With that, I am done sharing. So Kelsey, you are welcome to share.
It's always tricky trying to figure out how to make this work.
I see a great less mowing, more growing.
Okay, awesome. We're there then. This is great. Thank you so much, Jessie, for introducing me, and thank you all so much for having me this evening. It sounds like y'all are doing a bunch of really cool work. I'm surprised it's taken us all this long to connect, but I'm glad it's happening. But I'm really excited to share some more information about the Pennsylvania Lawn Conversion Program and hopefully give you guys some tools to participate in this initiative that's aiming to plant forests and meadows in place of lawns. Erin, I would just want to say you did a really nice job speaking about your pollinator corridor project. It sounds super fun, and I think that's such a good idea. I really wish that I had a yard in Phoenixville to actually like join your work, but you know, the cool thing is that anyone can really participate in creating a pollinator corridor. And so I'm just really excited to see just so much momentum and excitement around all of this work. So just going to go over a quick outline of what I'll be sharing with you all this evening. We're going to go over the lawn conversion program and talk about the benefits of lawn conversion. The benefits, I'm sure, are not going to be any new news for you all. I am going to spend a good bit of time talking about actually planting, and I'll primarily be focusing on how to actually plant a meadow, because I think that's probably what most of you are interested in. But if you have questions about either of those things that I don't cover, just feel free to pop questions into the chat box, and hopefully we'll have time for those. And then we'll round everything out by talking a little bit about some funding opportunities and some resources that you all can access. So I want to start this off by first bringing you to this property in South Middleton Township in Cumberland County. These are 4 acres of lawn here in red around this home that were heavily fertilized, and then they were mowed to the perfect height by its previous landowners. I think it was getting mowed twice a week, which is a bit excessive, I think. And for that couple, though, I think it was like a lot of people, it was how they expressed their love for the land, and they showed their neighbors how they cared about themselves and, you know, projecting some respect for themselves. But there are new landowners living there, and they've completely redefined their vision for that land. And so before, these were acres that were 4 of 2 million acres of lawn in Pennsylvania that were contributing to stormwater pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, and the continued loss and degradation of habitat. But thanks to a new vision with the landowners and DCNR's lawn conversion program, the new family, along with their young daughter, are going to have this whole new 4 acres of backyard that's going to improve water quality and feed both of them and wildlife. So we're going to start with a little bit of trivia, because you might be thinking, oh, it's just a little lawn, you're being super dramatic, what's the big deal here? So I want to pull you. So I just want you to look over these statements, and in the chat box, if you could, just let me know which of these letters you think is true. I'm not going to read them, so you guys can just read, and I will pause for a second. All right, so some of you are getting it. This was a trick question. All of these statements are true. This is not a little lawn that I'm talking about. Cumulatively, lawns are taking up a huge piece in our landscape. So let's do another one. Which of these statements is not true? And again, you can just read through these real quick and then just let me know which one is not true. Yeah, all right, you guys are getting it. So D is not true. Turf grass roots are not extensive and they definitely do not reduce soil compaction. So if you combine these statements with the fact that there's so much lawn and our lawn land use is growing, I hope that kind of lends a little bit of perspective as to why this program exists and why we're kind of focusing on lessening our lawn footprint and switching to native plants. And I just really want to hammer on this point that what happens on your property is going to impact wildlife, and it's also going to impact water quality regardless of where you are on the landscape. It doesn't matter where you are. It's all connected. But those water quality impacts, those are what really drove the development of our lawn conversion program. So stormwater is the only sector source of pollution that's actually increasing in Pennsylvania. And this is because people are living out in the suburbs surrounded by expanses of manicured turf. And then there's a whole lot of development. So land is transitioning from agricultural fields to, if you live in Cumberland County, warehouses. That's mostly what is happening here. But those short compacted root systems and the use of fertilizers in the lawns, they actually contribute to stormwater pollution that's entering our waterways. So whenever Pennsylvania was considering its best management practices to address pollutants entering the Chesapeake Bay and meet its EPA regulated total maximum daily load, its Bay diet or pollution diet, I'm sorry, it sent some new goals to address the issue. So in the Chesapeake Bay watershed alone, Pennsylvania has goals to convert 10,000 acres of lawns to forest and meadows by 2025, which is a lot. It sounds like a lot, but it actually only represents 1% of the lawn in Pennsylvania's portion of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And if you consider the entire state, those 10,000 acres are only 0.5% of the total lawn in the entire state of Pennsylvania. So we're really not talking about a lot of lawn. We are, but we aren't. But as I said, as land is being converted from forests and agriculture to housing developments and warehouses and shopping centers, those lawns, in addition to the impervious surfaces, are going to continue to be a source of water pollution. But this is something that we can start reversing thanks to these new goals. The lawn conversion program was born and it kicked off in early 2020. Right before the pandemic hit. It's not a great year to start a brand new program. I would not recommend it, but it's been fun nonetheless. The interest and participation in the program has been overwhelming. And I think that a lot of this is because previously homeowners like me or you maybe didn't have a substantial opportunity to participate in a federal or a state program at a significant scale. And now anyone has the ability to do their part to improve water quality as well as wildlife habitat, which to me is a pretty big deal. The lawn conversion program, it does encompass two different practices. So turf to meadows and turf to forest. And even though the program did come from the Chesapeake Bay watershed efforts, the program does operate statewide. I get asked this frequently, so I just want to be super clear up front that this is a lawn conversion program. The starting land use has to be lawn, so we are starting with this. We are not starting with this. We're not converting fallow fields, not pastures, not croplands. We're not converting lawns that were previously converted or let go and are now a mess. We're not converting scrub shrub habitat and trying to remediate a meadow. And we're definitely not converting forests that you've cut down to build your new home so you can be closer to nature or something. That's not what we're doing. We need to be starting with existing lawn. Aside from the WIP parameters that our program has to operate under, converting things like ag lands and fallow fields and lawns that were previously let go, those things do actually entail a bit more preparation and work, which is our program doesn't really have capacity for right now. So we're not really focusing on that, again, just focusing on that lawn. But I do want to say that if you have eggland that you're thinking about converting, or have a friend who maybe has eggland that they want to convert, you can reach out to your local conservation district to see if maybe they have any program recommendations. All right, so conservation landscaping is our first lawn conversion practice that we're going to cover. I just want to say that maintenance on all of these lawn conversion practices should always be to manage for invasive plants and to promote desired species in both meadows and forests. And so as much as we're starting with lawn, we also need to be thinking about that end goal and what we want at that end state. So conservation landscaping, this is just a fancy word to say meadows. These are native plantings that are intentionally managed as a meadow. So they're going to have a lot of diversity and variation. They're going to be dominated by native desired species, not non-native cool season grasses in a yard that we let grow. I do want to say that sometimes some of our partners do plant non-native annual plants, and that's only because they want to have a flush of color in the first 1 to 3 years of that planting so that people don't get too upset about it. But those annual non-natives do fade out very quickly in those plantings. So we're not usually too worried about those being in these mixes. One thing that I want to note also is just that we are applying this on a pretty large scale. So most of the work that goes through our program is actually at least a 1/4 acre in size. You can still do this practice on a smaller scale, but our program currently isn't set up to support that. But there are a lot of initiatives to support that. And there are a lot of ways that I'm starting to think that Wild Ones and I could definitely cooperate to bring this to a smaller scale. All right, and then our second practice is going to be lawn to forest. So we call these upland forest plantings. So these are just trees and forests that we're trying to establish that aren't right next to a stream. So forests generally are going to have very minimal to no maintenance after the establishment, and they eventually should start to regenerate themselves because eventually we want to have a forest that's full of, again, diversity, and then it's also going to have all of that forest complexity and structure. So think of different layers of trees and shrubs, as well as some ground covers, and then think about dead wood or fallen branches or anything like that. And then generally with the forest, they have comparably more short-term maintenance than meadows. So you might expect to need to maintain your forest pretty intensively for about the first 5 years. But then after that, you can I don't want to say you can ignore it, but it's going to be a lot less work for you. And then with both of our practices, we don't do fertilizer applications and we don't mulch. All right. I'm realizing that I think I have the wrong PowerPoint up, but this is going to be fine. We're going to roll with it. All right. So as I said, the lawn conversion program, it came out of the goals for the WIP. We have a whole lot of goals, but I have this more broader vision for our program. And that is really to make it possible for all Pennsylvanians to reduce their lawn footprint and plant forests and meadows instead. For us to do this, we're going to need a whole lot of things. We're going to need to build a lot of enthusiasm, which I think is building, thanks to you all, so that's going to actually start to shift that landscape paradigm. And that landscape paradigm is one that really says that our homes need to exist in this vast sea of fertilized and heavily manicured green. And we really need to have that widespread understanding that human spaces and wild spaces aren't separate, and they don't have to be separate. We can do things differently. And so our program, it is going beyond the encouragement to just plant native. So we're actually taking some of Doug Talamy's lessons that are in his books and bringing it this new opportunity to bear for folks to act on those inspirations. So our lawn conversion program is providing a means to implement woods and meadows at a larger scale, and then trying to work backwards from there and making it more accessible to everyone who has a lawn. So we're doing a bunch of different things. We have established a community of informed and passionate professionals across the state to share information, to help address some hurdles and build that solid program collectively. We're also providing some flexible non-competitive funding to partners. We are newly this year offering competitive funding to partners, which is pretty exciting. And that to me is just like the meat of the program, is just actually bringing the money to the table so that there's really just not an excuse at this point to not do this kind of work. Our team itself does plant woods and meadows, and we support our partners in doing that implementation as well. And to just kind of like blow it out and talk broadly, we're providing funding, the technical assistance, capacity building, and networking opportunities across the entire state to bring woods and meadows to backyards. So I want you to just kind of take a moment, think about the landscape around your home. If you want, you can tell me about your landscape in the chat box. I would love to hear about what you have going on. If you're somebody who still mows, I'd love to hear why you're still mowing. For a lot of people, I think that they are still mowing because maintaining the lawn comes easy. There's also the social pressure, but I really think that people know the routine, we know the tools. It's pretty easy to do. And then for others, lawns are aesthetically pleasing, or maybe that's just where they get together with their families and play, or just, I don't know, drink a beer or whatever in the evenings. And then there's also quite a bit of pushback against some of this stuff because there's a lot of issues, especially with weed ordinances or HOAs that kind of prohibit this. So there's a lot of work that we need to do in terms of communication and marketing and education. But still, we can still design these wild spaces around our homes and around our churches and in our parks that are intentional and that they're beautiful and they're inviting. All right. So one of the things, I just want to say is that I'm not hating on lawns. We can still keep some lawn for all of the reasons that we love it for. But we can take this acre of excess lawn and we can move it towards something that excites our sense of discovery and learning and is this new invitation to interact with nature. And a meadow can provide a lot of the same services to us as a lawn does. It's not exactly perfect, but it still is a place for play and for meditation and for beauty. Moving from a turf landscape to a native plant landscape, it offers a suite of benefits. Some of those benefits include improved water quality, habitat, climate change mitigation, improved beauty. And with all of these benefits, it's kind of crazy that we're still mowing every single Saturday. But what about just letting my grass grow a little longer or planting some clover instead? Can we just pick up a meadow in a can from Lowe's? No, it's really not the same. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons why it's not the same. Again, our program, it was created to address water quality issues, but there are a whole lot of benefits, and you can kind of see some of those benefits outlined on the right here. Aside from my day job, I'm also a community ecologist. So it's really hard for me to talk about lawn conversion without bringing the rest of the natural world into it. And I think that this is probably where most people get excited anyway, is whenever we start talking about animal and plant communities and all of the interactions that they have with plants. Hopefully this isn't novel information, but plants are the base of all food webs, chains, pyramids, however you want to call it. This is a food pyramid, and the reason I put this out here is because it points out the amount of biomass that you need to support higher trophic levels. So if you look at the bottom, all this is basically saying is that you need a whole lot of plants to support that sparrowhawk that's all the way at the top. And there's this really neat mutual relationship where plants need animals and animals need plants. We're going to talk a little bit about those things as well. All right. So we have a whole lot of green stuff on the landscape. Grass is green. So why is this a big deal? Why are we talking about native plants? Why don't I talk about all of the cool garden varieties of Eurasian species that are in my home and garden center? Again, plants are the base of food webs. And the type of the plant that's at the base of that food web does matter because we need native plants, not invasive plants, to support insects and wildlife populations and provide the best ecosystem services, including water quality improvements here in Pennsylvania. Native plants are supporting native insects because of all of the plant chemicals, plant nutrients, host plants, et cetera, that the two have evolved together. Lawns, they really don't support a lot of native insects and diversity. And that's because insects that are stopping in your lawn, it's kind of like driving an hour to a buffet while you're serving, paying for the parking and paying for the food on the buffet before you even see the buffet, only to realize that all of the trays of food are completely empty. And now you have wasted tons of energy and resources, and you need to do it all over again before you can find a meal. That's what stopping at a lawn is like for an insect. So we need to change that. We know that Dr. Doug Tallamy's research has shown that 90% of our native insects are specialists that feed on 3 or fewer families of plants. So they're very specialized. And these insects, they really only rely on native plant hosts, and they can't eat the exotic plants that are common in our yards. And that reduction in native insects means that birds have fewer insects to feed on, to feed to their young. And that's going to end up leading to a reduction of bird species. So again, we're kind of just talking about that chain reaction. And you know, I just really think that the world as we know it and as we love it, it's not going to be able to function and provide all of these ecosystem services. And we as humans, it really is up to us to protect them and promote them. You guys are, again, probably familiar with this, but Dr. Doug Tallamy, he did a bunch of research to see how many Lepidoptera species are supported by different plants. So whenever we talk about meadows, we obviously get really, really excited because we think these perennial plants are supporting a whole lot of leps, which they do. They definitely do. But what I think is really interesting is that woody plants are hosting a whole lot of native Lepidoptera, which is just absolutely incredible. All right, so does anyone recognize this plant? You can give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm seeing some thumbs down. Okay, so this is swallowwort. This is a perennial herbaceous vine from Eurasia. It is highly invasive. It's difficult to eradicate. It's toxic to wildlife, and it's actually a population sink for monarchs. So monarch caterpillars feed on milkweed. I feel like that, again, basic information. The swallowwort, though, is related to milkweeds. So adult monarchs sometimes lay their eggs on them, mistaking them for milkweed. And as much as I wish that this were a story of a non-native plant supporting a beloved pollinator, it's not really the case. There are a lot of studies that are showing that the monarch caterpillars can't actually feed on the swallowwort. So that swallowwort is actually acting as a population sink because any eggs that are laid and hatched on them are doomed to die. Again, native plants matter. And speaking of insects eating plants, I think people are sometimes bothered whenever they see an insect munching on one of their little plant babies, and that's okay. It's okay if that's happening. We want that. This little spicebush swallowtail needs only 3 single spicebush leaves for its entire larval stage, and then it can metamorphose and become a butterfly. That's not harming the tree. They have natural enemies that are keeping their populations in check. So our goal again here is just nature in the balance. We need to have native plants, we need to have native insects and native predators to balance each other out so that we can have this harmonious ecological community. And non-natives interrupt that balance and those relationships, and those interruptions can have very serious ecological effects, such as the case of chestnut blight, or even economical effects, such as the impact of invasive plants like Japanese stiltgrass preventing regeneration of oak forests. So again, we just really need to have a lot of native plants to support a lot of life. And really, if you don't see insects eating your plants, they're really not contributing to that ecological food web. All right, so we talked a lot about the above ground portions of the native plants, but there's a lot of good stuff happening below ground too. And I think this might have been from a Wild Ones Facebook post that I stole this from. So this is definitely a good infographic. Native plants, they make a home for the rain. They're a really smart choice to improve water infiltration. They improve soil health by supporting that healthy soil biota that processes nutrients and pollutants. they have these really deep, extensive root systems that are actually aerating the soil, reducing compaction and supporting that healthy soil biota. And these are all things that improve water infiltration. So if we're talking about water quality, this is a really good thing to kind of think about. Ray Archuleta, who's a professional soil scientist and does a lot of work with farmers, has said that we don't have a runoff problem, we have an infiltration problem. And that improved soil health is going to lead to dramatic increases in infiltration, increasing that infiltration by as much as 300%. And as much as, yeah, sure, that was, talking about farms, it's still like a perspective that we can bring into our own backyards. Studies have shown that the Northeast has experienced a 53% increase in extreme precipitation since 1996 as a result of human-induced climate change. And we're obviously going to be expecting this upward trend to continue. And at the same time, as I said earlier, urban and suburban settings have an increase in impervious surfaces. And these are areas where the goal is to move water away from us as quickly as possible. And so we need to make a home for the rain. We need water to get back into the system where it can recharge groundwater and be cleaned. And planting native plants across that whole landscape is a really cost-effective way for us to manage hydrology upslope so that we aren't slapping a band-aid of trees alongside a stream, hoping that'll solve our water quality issue. I'm not trying to throw shade to my sister program, but still. So I really just like to think of native plants in the upland portions of the environment as upland buffers because they're going to be reducing concentrated flows, they're going to be cooling the water, and they're still, again, filtering out pollutants and improving water quality. Meadows are actually really good at sequestering carbon. So in early 2021, holy cow, the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency presented preliminary results for their Tahoe Basin greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which included findings from a survey of meadows around the Tahoe Basin. Around the Tahoe Basin, they've lost about 40% of their meadows, marshes, and fens to development, which has left only around 4,000 acres of these habitats left at the time of the study. And we think of forests as being carbon sinks, but meadows can do it too. This study found that an acre of healthy meadow can sequester as much carbon as 6 acres of forest. And on the other hand, 3 acres of forest are required to offset the amount of carbon lost by 1 acre of degraded meadow. And so really our first role is to protect intact areas of forest and meadows, but it's secondarily to restore and bring native plants and habitat back to the landscape. And where we can't plant forests, we should try to plant meadows. And aside from the environmental benefits, native plants are just a really great choice for landscaping. They're well adapted for our climate. They're easy to care for. They help preserve crucial biodiversity. Arguably, I think that all of these are way more interesting than the non-native plants found in nurseries and box stores. And I'm a lazy gardener, so these are a great choice for people like me. Some more human benefits. Meadows, they're aesthetically beautiful. They provide these closer to home accesses to places that can heal us. They lower levels of stress hormones, cortisol, which I think all of us could use a lower level of cortisol these days. They help to reduce fatigue and improve our mood, lower blood pressure, and boost creativity and problem solving. And then they connect to a lot of our human values of, art, beauty, play, curiosity, learning, and again, just connecting people back to nature. And one of the big things is they're also giving us back time that we'd otherwise be spending caring for turf. All right, so now that you guys are hopefully excited about lawn conversion, we're going to talk a bit about some planting, how to do it. So we're going to start with planting a meadow. This is, again, going to talk a lot about planting a meadow, and then we'll bump into talking just a teensy bit about forest plantings before moving on with the rest of the presentation. So on the left, these are the things that our program does. There's a lot of different reasons why this is what our program does. And if you have questions about that, you can pop that into the chat. I just want to say that what we do with our program isn't the best or the only way to go about doing it, but it's the most efficient and cost-effective way for a state agency to make this work happen in a way that's positive and impactful. I do want to note again that the steps that I'm going to talk about are more applicable to a larger scale planting. So think about a 1/2 acre or more. For smaller sites like a garden bed around your home, some of the things that are on my not this list here are going to be a great choice for you. So those are going to be things like planting plug, maybe trying to overseed, or adding a little bit of mulch short term into your planting. When implementing a lawn conversion project, there are a lot of things that you have to balance whenever you're doing the planning, the implementation, the planting, the maintaining. You have to think about the time, the money, the environmental impact, the efficacy, the health, and the human perspective of every step that you're doing. And so from here, I really want you to think about creating a meadow as applying what's known as integrated vegetation management, or IVM. IVM is a practice that promotes desirable, resilient, and stable plant communities. So it's moving from one of non-natives, or noxious weeds in this graphic, to one that's going to be dominated by desired vegetation. So just think of it as using all of these different tactics to nudge your plant community along. Ideally, this is a process that's going to reduce the need for pesticides. And whenever I say pesticides, I do mean all of them. I mean insecticides, herbicides, fungicides, etc., and actually promote a healthy ecosystem. This is a whole system that, if you're curious about it, you can Google it and learn way more than I've provided here. I do also just want to say that I am going to mention herbicides in this presentation because it is just one of the tools of an effective IVM strategy, in addition to all of these other methods of vegetation control. We really only want to be using herbicides when and where they're needed, and otherwise leaning on those manual, those biological, and those cultural controls elsewhere. And all of this is super effective, and it's a very valid way to promote the plant community that you want. There's always going to be pros and cons to each tactic that you take. So it's really important that moving forward, as you're thinking about the best way to balance all of those pieces, you're just considering all of the pros and cons of them. And then just a final note on the herbicides, because I know that a lot of people are hesitant to apply them. I might be just like, I don't know, over here in my own corner, but I do firmly believe that the best people to use herbicide are people like you, because I know that you're not going to be excessively using and abusing it and spraying excessively and indiscriminately like PennDOT does along our roadways. And so if you're curious about herbicides, I just recommend you do your research and just, talk with reputable individuals and all of that. And then, but that really applies to any other like management tactic you want to take here. Just do your research, talk to people, and try to just, I don't know, get new perspectives and all of that. All right. So again, just in addition to the herbicides, though, I'm also going to provide you guys with some solid non-chemical methods of seeing a lawn conversion project through that I've at least found effective. So if there is a moment where I do recommend addressing a plant with herbicide, it's probably because it just didn't work for me. And maybe there's a different way to do it non-chemically. All right, so a meadow timeline, this is how you're basically going to be thinking about planting your meadow. This is about a year-long process, or just about, but the timeline can always just adjust if needed. With the meadows, we are typically planting in the spring or in the fall. We are not usually planting in the middle of summer because it's way too hot and way too dry, and that's going to roast your seeds, and it's also going to roast you. So I don't recommend doing that. So you're first going to just start by, if you're getting funding, you're going to connect with an eligible grant recipient, and then you'll move into planning, into site preparation, into planting, and then finally into the establishment and maintenance portions. So step one, if you're seeking funding from our program, you will need to get connected with me or somebody else who's familiar with the lawn conversion program. We are going to talk about funding once we get through all of this and what that funding kind of looks like. But if you don't want funding and just need technical assistance, you can still reach out to us or another partner who does these types of projects. Step two is going to be planning your projects. Probably most of us have heard like failing to plan is planning to fail. I think that's the quote, which is very true in this case. We really need to plan these projects well. I know the office stuff isn't exciting as seeing a meadow in bloom or seeding it, but it's very important so that we can ensure long-term success. So during that planning phase, you're going to be just kind of taking stock of the land You'll decide where you want to plant. You'll decide if you want to have any paths through your meadow. You'll want to figure out what tools you have available, because that's going to help you make those decisions to do your prep, your planting, and your maintenance. You need to figure out how you're going to seed the thing, who's going to be responsible for what, and then finally just making sure everyone's on the same page. As you're planning, I do recommend integrating cues to care. Cues to care are basically just cues to your neighbors that you're still taking care of this. So this can look like a lot of different things. So it can be these sinuous edges around your plantings. You can do mowed edges. You can do maybe a mulched bed on the edge of a more wild planting. You could do like a stone edge or fencing. You could do short plants or ground covers at the edge of your planting, so you don't have really tall plants that are kind of like falling in and just scaring people because they're getting touched by a plant. You also want to consider the distance to a house. We really don't recommend planting something like this closer than 30 feet to your house, because meadows are flammable, and so is your house. So don't do that. And then, of course, during this planning phase, you also want to talk to your neighbors. If your neighbors are really opposed to it, you might consider planting shrubs or trees as a screen, just to kind of keep them off your back. But you can also pop up signage, and you can start to think about what signage you want to put alongside the planting. During the planning, you're also choosing your native plant palette. I'm not going to talk a lot about this because this is basically its own workshop. But I just want to say, like, just accept the biome you're in and the soils that you have. Those are going to be the two most important factors in choosing what species to plant there. I'll have a couple of recommendations at the end for where to figure out where to get or what plants to plant. But generally, you're just going to want to consider like your soil texture and moisture, the light levels, the climate, and then other things. So if you need to consider like vertical structure or color or drifts that you might want to see, those are going to be things that you want to kind of consider as you're choosing your plants. And then, of course, with bloom periods, we want to maximize these for pollinators as much as possible. So make sure that you're choosing plants or a variety of plants so that you have something in bloom spring through fall. This is what a seed mix looks like. So they're pretty extensive. This is a seed mix that's from Ernst Conservation Seeds. They're who we use the most just because they're Pennsylvania based, but sometimes they don't have things that I want. So in that case, then I might look to another seed company like Prairie Moon Nursery or Roundstone Seeds. The Ernst mixes are pretty good. They're pretty much designed to make sure that something is in bloom all of the time. So they're a really good starting point, or you can take a look at some of these, figure out what plants you like, and then you can always just reach out to them and they can help you make a custom mix. All right, so step 3 is going to be your site preparation. So the goal here is to remove your existing turf cover and expose the soil, because we want to create a blank slate, or as close to one as we can get, because our native plants struggle to germinate with competition. So we want to give them the best opportunity possible. So we want to kill the existing turf, and there's a few options here. You can do herbicide applications. I don't recommend making mixtures of bleach, vinegar, and dish soap. I've seen that a couple times. Those are toxic mixes. Don't do that. But if you don't want to do herbicide, then you can do solarization or sheet mulching, which I have on the next slide that we'll talk about. And then after you remove the turf cover or you kill it, you want to expose the soil. So this is really only applicable if you're doing a broadcast seeding. So you need to remove all of that turf residue so that your soil is exposed and your native plant seeds can touch the ground. But if you're using a seed drill, you can just skip this step. All right, so sheet mulching is probably what's more commonly used. I think it's also called like lasagna mulching, which is cute. You could do solarization, but I have heard that in Pennsylvania, we don't get enough sunlight for it to really be effective. But if you're curious about that, I'd recommend reaching out to Xerxes Society. Actually, it was somebody from Xerxes Society who said they wouldn't recommend doing it, but you could do it if you want to. The sheet mulching, this is probably going to be best for some of the smaller projects that you all are doing. I wouldn't really recommend doing this across a whole acre project because that's a lot. That would be a lot. But again, goal is just to smother the existing plants and prevent new seeds from germinating. So for this, you're going to need cardboard. So save those boxes from the Facebook Marketplace purchases or go to your local recycling center. And then you'll need a whole bunch of mulch to just put on top of it. So the way that we do this is we soak the soil before laying down the cardboard. We're going to make sure that we remove all of the tape from the cardboard. We'll put the cardboard down over the planting area, and we're going to overlap each piece by about 6 inches so that the weeds can't find their way back up through the surface. We'll soak the cardboard again with water to just kind of keep it in place while we're doing everything else. And then we'll add all of this kind of like brown organic matter on top. It'll be about 6 to 12 inches deep. You can put compost on top, you don't have to, but then you want to kind of put a final layer of mulch on top of that about 3 inches deep. You want to keep all of this in place for about 6 months. A full year is better. It's going to take a while for all of this to decompose, and actually it might not even decompose because there's a lot of like weird stuff that goes into papers to make sure that they don't get like soggy and gross. That could be inhibiting decomposition of the cardboard. But this is an effective way to prepare that seed bed. So if you don't want to just let it decompose, you could even just like scrape it off and just remove it entirely and just shove it all into your compost bin. Once all that turf is dead, you're going to want to remove the residue. So on the small scale, you could use something like these. So on the left, we have a garden weasel, which is just a little garden cultivator that you just like run over the soil and it's just going to chew things up a little bit. And then if you have something like a winter annual pop up across your site after killing the turf grass, you can use something like flame weeding to actually kill off all of that green vegetation. This is not going to start an extensive fire because again, everything's going to be pretty moist and green. You're just going to be burning all of that chickweed. All right, so step 4 is going to be planting. This is the fun step. This is whenever we're actually sowing your seeds. So you have 2 choices here. You can do a no-till drill or you can do broadcast. If you do a no-till drill, you want to make sure that you're using a drill that has a specialized box and a picker for fluffy seeds of native grasses. You'll want to make sure that you order the seed separately because it's going to be mixed differently because of the boxes. So the seed drill is going to have 3 different boxes typically. So one for fine seed, one for coarse seed, and one for fluffy seeds. So something like an evening primrose is going to go in the fine box, wild senna would go in the coarse box, and then big blue stem would go in the fluffy box. And then once you have everything in the boxes, you just run the drill over the site and you're done. You can walk away. But if you're doing broadcast, you need to do a little bit more work. So you need to mix all of the seeds together and you need to mix it with a carrier like rice hulls or kitty litter. Those are things that are going to help you spread the seed evenly across the site and helps you get a really good throw. You want to spread that seed sparsely. You're not going to be spreading it thickly like grass. You don't really want to see a whole lot of seed on the ground because again, those native plants, they can't deal with a lot of competition. They need a lot of room. After you spread the seed, you want to tamp it in. You do this with a cultipacker or a lawn roller because you want to get really good seed soil contact. You don't want to till it in. Native seeds really shouldn't be any deeper than about a 1/4 inch under the soil surface. And then after you're done with all that, you spread a little bit of weed-free straw that's going to just kind of protect all of the soil from erosion, from raindrops, and hold a little bit of moisture into the soil. So we're leaving about 70% of the soil exposed. The broadcast seeding, I think, is probably the most fun option here, of course. It's pretty accessible, but one thing to note is that if you're working with older people, you might want to reconsider or maybe try to think of ways you can make it more accessible because as you can see, this ground is very uneven and you really need to have really good footing to walk across all of this. All right, so step 5 is going to be your establishment. So this is going to be years 1 and 2 of your meadow. You really just need to be patient with all these things because meadows are known to sleep, creep, and leap. So in year 1, they're sleeping, year 2, they're creeping, and in year 3, they're leaping, and they should look like a meadow at that point. But again, year 1 and 2, they might not look super great. So you want to do something just like an infrequent establishment clipping to about 8 to 10 inches whenever the plants are 15 inches high. You can use a weed whacker for that. If you have something small scale or if you have something large scale, I'd recommend finding somebody with a boom mower to make all that happen. You might want to do something like a spot herbicide application or spot clippings. And again, the spot clippings you can do with a weed whacker. if you find that there's something that's really just being tenacious and you want to kind of get it under control. The goal here is just you want to prevent any annual weeds from going to seed. Here, you don't want to be pulling plants. Pulling plants is going to expose a fresh seed bed for any weeds to take hold. Step 6 is going to be maintenance. Once you're in here, you're just nudging everything along. You're encouraging those native plants to flourish. You generally are going to stop mowing that entire state annually. You'll do some spot or rotational mowings on about 3 to 5 year rotations. The goal, again, is to control annual weeds, to invite diversity, kind of prevent woody plant establishment, which the mowings, they're kind of effective at doing that. So you might need to get in there and do a little bit more pooling or something with those woody plants. And then you just want to maybe do some spot herbicide applications if you absolutely have to. But otherwise, the meadow itself is just going to need kind of that periodic disturbance, typically with a mowing. If you want, you can implement prescribed fire if it warrants it and you have an appropriate site. Some of the long-term maintenance tools that we use are this seed harvesting hook that's on the left. That's really great for just kind of clipping things. On the right-hand side are two tools that I really like for biennial weeds. So at the top is a parsnip predator. That's really good for controlling things like bull or musk thistles or burdocks, basically any of the plants that are biennial weeds with a deep taproot that you want to kind of distance yourself from. And then if you have something that's a biennial taprooted plant, you can use something smaller. I don't even know what these are called, maybe like dandelion pickers or something. But they're basically a small parsnip predator where they have a little forked tine, which you just like put down in the soil and you can kind of just like pluck things out. I really like that tool for mullein. All right, so we talked about meadows. I'm going to just talk really briefly about planting a forest because I know that I'm already over time. All right, so again, forests, we want to make sure that we're planting them in a way so that the resulting community is going to be complex. It's going to have vertical structure. It's going to have all the natural regeneration that we would see in a typical forest. For these, we're planting trees at about 150 to 200 stems per acre. And by year 15, we're expecting about 70% survival of that planting. Timeline looks super similar. Again, not planting in the middle of spring or we're not planting in the middle of summer because again, it's hot, it's dry, and those plants are not going to be happy. Yeah. Again, not going to really belabor this, but planting trees is pretty straightforward compared to meadows. You want to control the turf grasses around the trees to reduce competition in full habitat. You can do that with herbicide rings, with modified 2A rocks, or with weed mats. You want to make sure you're sourcing your trees from native tree and shrub nurseries, which we have a whole lot in Pennsylvania. Those trees are going to, again, need some extra attention during establishment, but you don't have to water them, so don't water them. Just go out there occasionally and make sure that there's no leaders from the trees are like stuck in bird nets or anything like that. And then again, over time, you're going to be allowing for that natural forest regeneration. And hopefully over time, it's going to look like this. That canopy is going to start to close. And if you give it some more time, you're going to have this really healthy forest ecosystem that has lots of structure for birds to hide and nest in, where maybe some trees are dying as others are growing. And where some of those downed trees and branches that are on the ground are places where kids and adults can find salamanders hiding. All right, so quickly, funding opportunities. Bummer here is that we don't have a lot of funding opportunities because the program is so new. I'm going to talk in a second about the PLUS funding because I think that's probably going to be what you guys are most interested in, what I think will work best for you. But there are a lot of other alphabet soup programs that are accessible. The C2P2 Partnerships Grant is one available through DCNR. National Fish and Wildlife Federation have a whole bunch of different programs that support this work. But if you're doing a smaller project, I think we could probably work with the PLUS funding, but Xerxes Society also has this like cute little habitat kit. So that lawn conversion PLUS funding is available statewide. But before I get a whole bunch of emails asking for funding, we are out of funding for 2022 projects. Again, program has had a lot of interest and way more interest than I think our decision makers thought it would, which is a good problem. And I'm grateful for it, but we do have a wait list. So if you have a project, just reach out to us and we can add it to the wait list. So with this funding, we're typically funding something that's a minimum of a ½ acre in size. That ½ acre can be contiguous. So if you have something where like several of your neighbors want to do this and you guys can get up to a ½ acre, that'd be awesome. Again, I'm starting to consider ways that we can make this money work though for some of the smaller projects. So maybe you all have some ideas. I would love to hear them. For this program, the only eligible funding recipients are actually literally anyone except for the landowner. We can't give money directly to a landowner. So they'll need to work with what we call an implementation partner. So you all, I think, could probably be an implementation partner. And again, these are for shovel-ready projects. So there's something where if I gave you the cash now, you could run and implement the project. And then we are funding these at a flat rate. So this is $5,000 per acre. And you also have the option to request more, which is the plus portion of the funding program. And again, just want to say that the program is funding lawn conversion. So my rule of thumb is that if it's in seed and the vegetation is taller than my little dog here, Badger, it's probably not going to be eligible. So the timeline for the lawn conversion plus funding is actually pretty super easy. These projects are going to be accepted on a rolling basis until the funding is spent down. So I just recommend reaching out to me for application materials. Those application materials are pretty simple. It's going to be just a simple project summary that is just like you just fill in the blank. There's going to be a planting plan that you need to write. I just need to see a map, and then I need a 5-year funding agreement and then a 5-year landowner agreement. And those are just agreements that say that you are going to spend our money to plant X acre of lawn conversion project and that it's going to be taken care of for 5 years. So it's pretty simple. Once you're done with all those application materials, you submit them to me for review. I'll email you if there's any changes requested. If you're a first-time applicant, you might have some changes, but after that, they're usually just like send it to me and they're approved immediately. And then after a project is approved, you're going to actually receive your full funding within about 45 days. So there is no waiting for funding here. You can get going. And then after you're done planting, I just want to see a post-planting report within 60 days of planting. I also just want to say, like, you don't have to submit budgets with this. Like, I don't care about your budget unless you're, if you are applying for the plus funding though, you do need to submit a justification form that would include a budget, but otherwise I don't care. I just want to make sure that, the money is being spent to create however many acres you applied for. All right, so some quick resources. There's a whole bunch of resources out there. So DCNR has some good ones. So we have a Landscaping with Native Plants webpage. It includes things like nurseries and seed companies and plant recommendations and native garden templates. It's a really good resource, recommend it. We also have a lawn conversion advisory committee. So if you're one of those people who's really interested in taking part in the program and really like launching all of this, this is something that you could participate in and you could email me about. And then we also have service foresters and regional watershed forestry field specialists. So these are our people, these are our boots on the ground that are providing things like technical assistance, maybe some veg management decision or suggestions. They are helping you with like planning and writing your planting plans. They're connecting you with funding opportunities and people. And honestly, sometimes I don't even know what all they do because they do so much, but they're a really great resource to connect with. Online, there's a whole bunch of things again. So Penn State's Wildland Weed Management is a really good resource if you're trying to figure out how to manage vegetation. They provide herbicide recommendations, but then they also provide those like those manual and cultural controls for a lot of invasive plants. I recommend checking out National Wildlife Foundation's Native Plant Finder just to see what native plants are going to grow well in your area. And then it also connects those plants to all of the Lepidoptera species that that feed on it, which is really cool. Xerxes Society is great. And then again, Ernst Conservation Seed has some planting guides that are super helpful whenever you're planning your planting. I always recommend visiting places to seek some inspiration. So some good places to go would be Jennings Environmental Center. This is in Butler County, which I know is the opposite side of the state for most of you, if not all of you, but it's really cool. It's this rare relic prairie, and it gives us this really cool glimpse as to what prairie ecosystems would have looked like after the last glaciers receded 10,000 years ago. Again, it's really cool. I would recommend visiting in early August. It's a nice little end of summer getaway. Down your way, you guys have Bowman's Hill, Mount Cuba Center, and Longwood. So if you haven't been there, I would recommend going there. And then there's a bunch of certification programs. So there's like the watershed friendly property, the pollinator friendly gardens, Bee City USA, and I know that I forgot a lot that belonged on this slide, but there's a lot of certification programs to get a little sign in your yard and to communicate to your neighbors that this is intentional and that it's actually highly valued. We have a lot of things coming down the pipeline. Again, program's 2 years old, and last year was a little bit rough. So this year we have a lot more things kind of going on, which I'm really excited about. So if these are things that you're interested in participating in, I would be really happy to have you involved. And then I just want to leave you with this graphic, because I think whenever we talk about lawn conversion, it's really easy for us to get really excited. Because this program is challenging the way that humans have defined nature as something to be tamed and something that exists separately from us. And those homes that are in these seas of manicured turf are the symptom of that paradigm. And these green landscapes are normal, but I think that we are at the point where most of us are realizing the need to reconsider what the American lawn looks like. And we need to do this for wildlife and for the climate and for each other. And this is a very uncomfortable and possibly difficult change for people to make, because as much as people understand the benefits of transitioning their lawns to native habitat, there's a lot of hesitation. There's the societal pressure of caring for the land in a traditional sense. People are concerned about ticks. They're concerned about what their neighbors are going to think. They're concerned about getting a citation from their municipality. And I get that. I totally get that. But it's really not going to work long term. And so we really need to start retraining all of these systems that force us to have these homes surrounded by perfect turf grasses. And so I think that people need to see and understand that woods and meadows can be intentional landscapes, that they can be full of beauty and they can actually integrate into their lifestyles. And I think that there are enough people out there like you all that are willing to make that switch and to promote it. Because I think that you guys are really the ones that are going to be making that social paradigm shifts. So with that, I know I'm over time, but I really appreciate you guys listening. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for the work that you do. And thank you for the privilege of speaking to you all.
Kelsey, it was our pleasure. Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation, very informative. I can't wait to share this with several people who will want to take advantage of this program immediately. And even those who don't know they want to yet, it's going to be that additional seed. We just keep planting seeds in people's brains that this is the way to go. So thank you for helping us do that. I am coming back to share my screen, and then I want to double check the chat. I think you had a couple questions, so I want to make sure we get to that. Double checking. Increasing, oh, wait, I know it's up here. I've talked to a friend who has a large field of grass that is mowed about converting to meadow, but she's worried about ticks. What should I tell her?
Yeah, the tick conversation is a really hard one because I think that, oh man, a lot of people are concerned about ticks. I think bugs creep people out in general. And then there is kind of this added dimension of the health impacts that come along with having ticks in our backyards. So it's really up to you what you want to tell her, but I do recommend just having that conversation thoughtfully and really listening more than trying to convey information, because I think that this is oftentimes an emotional conversation that you need to have. But there are some tactics that you can do to reduce the incidence of ticks getting on you. ticks are going to live in that meadow. Absolutely. If you know anything about the tick life cycle, you know that they require mice and they require deer, and meadows are going to bring in mice and deer and therefore ticks. So what I recommend to people is, if they're concerned about that, mow wide paths, mow something that's going to be like a 6-foot path through your meadow. If that's something that you want to do, if you want to be able to be close to your meadow in that capacity, mow that thick path through it. Because those mice, they're really not going to be going out into the open, because that open space, that's where they're going to get picked off by raptors and other things. So they're really not going to want to do that. So that's probably the best thing that you can do, is just mow wide paths. Another tactic you can do is to plant shorter vegetation along the edges. That's not really going to stop ticks from being in those edges, but it is going to stop vegetation from flopping out into you and into the turf grass that you're maintaining. And it's going to kind of keep those things from touching you. Because I mean, ticks, they like to sit on top of vegetation and reach out and grab people. So if you're close to the vegetation, it's going to reach out and grab you. So those are probably my 2 biggest recommendations: wide paths, short vegetation around the edges.
Excellent, thank you. Aaron was asking if you might be able to provide the graphic of the, it was the one that showed the food pyramid and the trophic layers. So if you would be able to maybe send that in an email and I can disperse it, that would be so great.
Yeah, definitely.
Someone said, Maria was asking about information on converting smaller yards. So it would be that less than a half an acre to move towards minimal lawn. Are there programs or information that you could send along to us about that?
Yeah, this is a tougher one. Just because I don't think that there are a whole lot of programs that are doing this. I'm not really familiar with the work that you guys are doing, but it sounds like you guys are doing a lot of plug plantings. Is that correct?
We are taking advantage of our ability to buy flats of plants and then are passing those plugs on to people. So they're doing essentially lawn conversions using plugs, which is just a more immediate effect, cost effective versus trees and shrubs in a larger size, but more expensive than seeding.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So that's a good tactic. I think that's something you can absolutely do. As far as programs go, there's not really a whole lot to do something at that smaller scale, which again is something that I would really like our program to move towards, but I'm a little overwhelmed right now. So, which is good. Again, it's really good to be overwhelmed. But like I said, I think the Xerxes Society, their little meadow kits, I think that that's a good avenue to go down. They might also know of other programs that you might be able to access. But as of right now, I can't really think of anything that's going to support smaller scale lawn conversions financially. That's something that we can help with though. We can still provide you with like technical assistance. I think that's definitely something that we can do. And you can still do seedings over a smaller scale again, if you want to do that, but you can also, I love it whenever people do a smaller scale meadow seeding, but then they also incorporate plugs, because again, you're going to get that more immediate effect, but it's also going to reduce the cost that's associated with it. Trying to think what else might be available in you guys' area. Maybe hit me up at the end of the year. I can't talk about certain things. So, but there's, I think, some good things happening that are coming on the horizon. It's just taking a little bit. But if you guys are really interested in maybe like helping me develop a program that would support the smaller scale plantings, I would love to chat with you. Because again, like I think that it's going to be those smaller scale plantings that are really kind of move the needle in terms of that social shift and showing people that they can do this and that this can be effective.
Completely agree. We got a homegrown national park, right? Everybody's got to do their part. Audrey is asking, how far apart do you recommend planting trees so that you're trying to establish a forest?
Yeah, so with our program, we're planting them typically on a 5x5 grid, offset grid, or not, I'm sorry, not a 5x5, a 15x15 grid. You can go more or less. You can do something denser if you want to. You can go wider if you want to. That 15 by 15 grid, though, is expecting mortality of trees. So over time, those trees, their canopies are going to start to close and they're going to start to actually like self-select. Our forests typically don't have densities that are 200 trees per acre. They're much lower than that. And so we're kind of just jump starting and then giving everything an upper hand with the program. But if you want to start planting something that's sort of like maybe a little bit more natural looking, you could plant them more like 25 to 30 feet away. You can do that. Doesn't matter.
Excellent. And it's also about how you're going to maintain them as they're establishing, right? So if you are working with a regular mower, you want to make sure you're planting so that you can at least mow to keep that grass competition down, right? Things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So consider your mowing deck. So if you have a 6-foot mow deck, you might want to just do like a 12-foot or maybe a 13-foot spacing, just so you can get 2 passes in and it's not super crazy and you're not doing a whole bunch of work.
Rick says that you mentioned partners. Can they recommend companies or installers they work with to install a meadow?
Yeah, so I do have a little contractor list. I can send that to you too. Let me write that down. I'm trying to think who we work with down in your area. In your area, we would work a lot with Land Studies or Weeds Inc. Those would be the 2 down in your area.
Did you
that
say
I would probably
Bank?
Weeds Inc. Yes.
I think Weeds Spank. They should change their name.
Weeds stink. I do love that.
So funny.
That's so good. Yeah. But and just one thing I do want to note about the Weeds Inc. thing though, they do use herbicide. I don't know if they do anything organically. Land Cities, I'm also not sure if they do anything organically. Oh, I forgot one. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on it. There is another company down in your area that does things organically.
You think about it,
I'm
send
gonna
me.
think about it.
Great. No problem. No, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No problem.
Anna wants us to remember that PA Native Plant Society also has a grant application process to help with these things. Their deadline is like right now for their grants. I think it might have been yesterday. It's somewhere around here, but check that out.
Yeah, I think
I
ended
saw after
March
I
1st.
sent that it ended March 1st. Yeah.
But we're in planning stages. So if you're planning to move towards this, think about deadlines for next year for wondering if anyone's counting Lancaster Land Trust or other funding that might be out there to purchase large tracts of land. We will have to talk about that, Erin. That sounds amazing. Let's buy all the land and turn it into native plants. That's what I want to do.
Yes.
David Brothers
Actually,
Landscaping will work with non-systemic herbicides. So that's a landscaping company out of Montgomery County, I believe. So that's a great lead, Susan. Thank you. Okay, and then we will answer that about something else. So Kelsey, I think that we covered all of the questions. Thank you so much. I'm gonna check my next thing here. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys just a couple things. Kelsey had talked about solarization. And this is definitely for smaller projects. We're not talking acres. We're talking, I'm going to show you a couple projects, but solarization is the idea that you're using the sun's heat and 6 mil black or clear plastic to kill existing turf and weed seeds in the soil. You're keeping it covered on all sides. You're sealing them, so you're decreasing airflow and increasing temperatures for 4 to 6 weeks. So this is what a project can look like in your backyard. This is about 25 by 25 feet, so it's not gigantic, but way better than existing turf grass. I used the ground itself as a holder, like I stapled essentially the tarp into place and then used wood and things to hold down the corners. Secured it with rocks. This project started at the end of May in 2020. So my plan was to seed in the fall. So I wanted to use the heat of the summer sun to do this. So I mowed really low. I put down the tarp or the plastic. You leave it on for 4 to 6 weeks, and then you take a solarization break. You pull back the tarp, you rake away the stuff that has died in that 4 to 6 weeks, and you allow the site open to air for 2 to 3 weeks. Let anything that's still viable in the soil germinate, and then you cover it back up. So this was what it looked like when I pulled off that tarp after 4 to 6 weeks. You can see everything died. I raked up, all that turf grass there, let it open, and then I covered it again. So that's the second solarization. We're in the heat of summer now. It was like August, I want to say. Any surviving turf and weed seeds in the soil have had a chance to grow. You put the black plastic back on for another 4 to 6 weeks, make sure the sides are sealed again. And then there are 2 ways that you can go about it, depending on your timeline. You can leave that plastic in place until you're ready to sow your seed, or you can take it off if you think you're going to be sowing immediately, or if you just don't think that your blow-in seed population is going to be terrible. Like, you can kind of decide when you want to remove the plastic, kind of based on convenience and thinking ahead. If I take it off, a month before I'm going to sow seed, the chance is there that you're going to get in a lot of seed you don't necessarily want. But now that the competition from the turf and the weeds has been removed by your solarization, you can sow your seeds. Most native seeds need to go through stratification, so the best time to do this is in the fall. You can cover with a light leaf mulch or a light layer of clean straw to protect the area over winter. So this is what that looks like. And in fact, my plan to plant in the fall ended up turning into a January planting, but we had uncovered the black plastic. The ground is actually a little frozen in this picture, so we kind of roughed it up just a little bit to take the ice crystals off, essentially. And then we mixed our Ernst seed mix with the clay-based kitty litter as the mixing agent so that your seeds kind of get dispersed more evenly. And then we covered with leaf mulch, and this is what it looked like after we sowed it. We put a fence up so the dogs wouldn't run through it, but we don't have deer pressure, so we didn't have to worry about that too much. Now, the first year, you're going to allow your native plants to establish strong roots while preventing your annual weeds and invasives from establishing. So you mow to a height of 8 inches from about May to September every time the meadow reaches higher than 12 inches. So Kelsey had mentioned 15 inches, so there's some leeway in there. Decide what equipment you have to work with. I confess that I probably made a big mistake in the meadow I just established because I mowed it with a regular lawnmower. And thinking back on it, I really wish I would have just weed whacked it instead of taking it down so low. So I will let you know how well it establishes after that rookie mistake. The second year, you're only going to mow once a year or less, depending on the size you're covering, because Kelsey had said, you can go on a 3 to 5 year rotation. But you're going to mow in late winter or early spring to control woody growth and prevent trees and shrubs and invasives. And that's if you are managing for a meadow, you're not allowing for succession. But you're going to leave all of that growth over the winter to feed the birds and provide habitat for overwintering insects. That's why you're mowing late winter, early spring, not, the middle of July, when you might be lucky enough to have ground nesting birds in there, or, November, when all the bugs are in there trying to sleep for the winter. This was a little bit larger project. This is at a new park in my township, and you can see, or maybe you can't tell, but this is just construction grade crap grass that they had planted to cover large sections. And we said, hey, well, how about if we solarize? This is an 85 by 30 foot section. The people standing in the corners are what the tarp is going to cover. We decided to do this, I think it was like July 3rd, rock hard soil. You can tell those people can't even get a shovel in that in that ground. So we had to improvise. We ended up putting down just wood along, and we ran string, like this twine stuff, from corner to corner to keep it solarized. But this was the second step that when we pulled the tarp off the first time, and you can see it did a good job at killing that crap grass that was there. These are my my teenagers, and they are great laborers, day workers. So then in January, we went through all the steps. We covered it back up. In January, we pulled the tarp off for the seeding, and because we hadn't removed the biomass at any point, because it was just that really shallow rooted grass, we had this great healthy looking mix that at least some breakdown had happened and actually added probably to the soil that was there, because it was such degraded soil anyways. So we just raked off some of that to, one, provide a little bit of a berm, because it is slightly downhill, just very slightly, and also just so we could get that better soil contact with the seeds. Now, this picture is taken about 10 minutes before a snowstorm happened. So we did, while I would have loved to, we did not get to seed that exact same day. However, we did get to seed in the snow, because there is a technique where you can seed directly on snow, and when the snow melts, it falls right down, and then you've got good soil contact because everything's nice and moist. So we're trying out that process. But to tamp it down a little bit, we got these big pieces of cardboard and essentially spread the seed and then stomped them down using the cardboard. It's all just a fun experiment, really. And then we coordinated with the township to have the leaves that the township residents collected and put at the end of their driveways collected and brought to the site so that we could spread them out and use them as a cover. So that was one great way. I'm not showing you any after pictures yet. It's in a different presentation, but also these things are also very young. So we'll learn as we go, and I can maybe tell you better how to do things after we've figured it out a little more. But I wanted to go over a couple other ways that you can do this in smaller scale. So you can hand remove turf grass and plant directly in. You can, now this is just one wheelbarrow full of turf grass that was removed. I planted plugs and little plants that I had grown from seed directly in this. And it happens in, I shouldn't say immediately, but within 2 months, this is what you have, like in established plants. You went from something that was 2 inches to something that's 2 feet very quickly. And then another eco-friendly way to do some site preparation, I use chickens to scratch. I kind of enclose them in the same spot for a couple of weeks. Every day I would bring them out and have them scratch and scratch and scratch. The best part about that is they don't like violets. So all of my violets were left in the spot, but they got rid of all the turf grass. So then I could plant into that cleared out section around my violets. And then the violets became a great ground cover. And they added their own fertilizer. Like, they were great day laborers too. Another way that you can decrease your turf grass is by taking an existing tree and putting a flower bed under and around it. And you're creating those soft landings, which is a term that has kind of become popular now, but it explains how the lepidoptera that are feeding on your native trees need a place to fall down when they are pupating to be safe. And this provides that. And it also protects those creatures and others from mowing directly under and right around your trees. So it's multifunctional. It's much lovelier than turf grass. And then when you get more plants or have more time, you can add more. So I took this existing bed, I took cardboard, and I didn't do the lasagna mulching. I am too impatient to wait 6 to 12 months, sadly. So I put down cardboard, I put down mulch and I waited maybe a week, not long enough, I'm sure. But then I planted into it, and what I basically used the cardboard more as a weed barrier than anything else, because I cut the holes directly out of the cardboard, put my plants in, mulched around them. The mulch is a temporary fix just to prevent weeds while all of these plants establish. So in that 3-month time between laying the cardboard and putting the mulch, 3 months later, this is what it looks like, which is a very established looking early planting. Same thing with this. This is directly into turf grass. You can see the top left picture. I pretty much dug a hole in turf, gave it a little buffer, put my small saplings in there, put the cardboard around, again, more as a mulch or as a weed barrier than anything else. Mulched heavily. I don't think that I included the picture, but I had already expanded that bed too. Oh no, I did. Look, like a month later, I was like, oh, I've got more plants. I'll put more in this bed. So I just did the same thing. I expanded the bed using cardboard. And this is even less than that. I didn't even use cardboard. Turf grass, I put shrubs in there. This is in May. And then in 4 months later, that's those same shrubs that were a stick essentially when I put them in the ground. They take quickly. I didn't take out the turf grass because those shrubs are going to outcompete the turf grass. They're going to shade them out. The turf grass is not going to survive. But then I did go back in and plant some ground cover like tiarella and different things, Jacob's ladder, underneath those plants, some shade loving perennial ground cover plants to add to this so that the turf grass will be no more. That's the other side of it. It's now my little office outside. So there are ways that you can do this in your property so that we can have less lawn with little to no preparation or extensive preparation. Kind of depends on how fastidious you are about your outcome and how much work you want to put into afterwards. I don't think Zach is on with us tonight. He was going to talk to us a little bit about this, so we're going to skip that. And I want to go, Susan, do I need to address any chat information before we go into upcoming events?
No, I think we're up to date on that.
Perfect. Okay. So our upcoming opportunities this weekend is our virtual conference. We have our own Wild Ones track. It is hosted by the Chester County Beekeepers Association. They've fully funded it, and we have some excellent speakers. On the left, if you sign up for the conference, there is an opportunity to buy a welcome pack. And excuse me, the picture on the left is the t-shirt logo that they came up with. It's lovely. And we have seeds that they paid for that Susan designed our beautiful labels for that went into the welcome packets. So I very much look forward to hearing all of our presenters. And the added benefit is everybody who pays for the conference, it's got 30 speakers at the entire conference. Wild Ones has a 5-speaker track, but say of the 300 people that registered for the conference, 250 of them are beekeepers who are going to listen to the 25 beekeeping talks, but they get access to the recordings, and they're going to go back and listen to the Wild Ones tracks, and then they're going to learn all about these native plant things that they didn't even know they needed to learn about, and they're going to affect change on their properties because of this. So I'm very excited about that. Some other great things from Grow Native Massachusetts has an Evening with the Experts series that's coming out. The link is here. They've got some great speakers. If you have never heard Benjamin Bott give his presentation on a new garden ethic, or if you have not read that book, please do so. It is amazing. So these are all free webinars, and you just have to sign up for those. The Monarch Butterfly Conservation webinar series on March 22nd is talking about roadsides as habitats for monarchs. Is it a great opportunity or a salty death trap? That sounds very interesting and pertinent to a lot of the conversations that we're having in EACs and things like that want to plant along roadways. So I'm interested to hear what the research is really showing, because to me it seems like a great idea. I don't know though. Will the research say we need to have a wider buffer? I don't know. Let's find out. We'll attend and figure it out. Natural Lands just announced their Buds and Suds plant sale. They have apparently more than 200 varieties of native plants with 100 new offerings. If you're a member, you get 1 day early access to the online sale. If you're not a member, it's the next day, and the sale goes on until the plants are sold out. And then you say when you'll go and pick up your plants. And then while you're there, you can check out, I believe it's pickup will be at Stoneleigh. And we as a chapter have a guided tour at Stoneleigh coming up later in the year. One of our members, I have to bring it up here on my phone. Cindy Noss wanted us to know about these two plant sale opportunities. The Abington Birdtown and EAC are having a plant sale. The proceeds go to the McKinley Elementary School garden maintenance. And her friend runs the garden, and the plants are splits from the big, beautiful garden there. And then on May 21st, the Upper Dublin Birdtown and the Ambler Keystone branch of the Women's National Farm and Garden Association are holding a plant sale that go to a scholarship for a Temple Ambler horticulture student. And it's going to be held in front of the new native plant demonstration garden, so people can enjoy the garden while they're there. So that sounds like a really great opportunity. The Lancaster Native Plant and Wildlife Festival did come out with their date. It is a week later than I was hoping it would be, but it's on April 30th from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's free. There will be 5 native plant nurseries there, so you can buy all sorts of great plants. They will have the Ravens Ridge Wildlife presenting at 9 o'clock, and they will have a food truck there. So lots of fun stuff to be had there. The Pennsylvania Native Plant Society is also having a festival. That's on May 7th, and it is more in central PA. I am going to try and make it to that one. Any of these events, I would love it if people who want to go, if we all kind of go as a group or carpool or figure out maybe how we can go as wild ones. And speaking of that, our upcoming events, these are our chapter meeting dates for the rest of the year. We have everything planned out. I'm very excited to say. Next month, we'll be having an edible landscapes presentation by Michelle Hensey. Mark will be coming back in May to talk to us about design and planning. Specialist pollinators will be in June because that is Pollinator Awareness Week. In July, Beth will be talking to us about the Bondsville Mill Park. And then this is really exciting, guys. And I didn't put it on here. Oh my gosh. Later in July, we are having a Wild Ones of Southeastern Pennsylvania chapter picnic at Bondsville Mill Park. And yours truly is so excited to plan all sorts of dorky plant games. I can't wait. So if you have dorky plant games that you have already created, please hit me up and let me know, because I want to play dorky plant games with you. In August, we're going to have Anne Falkoff of the Wild Seed Project talk to us. Mark will come back in September. Oh, in October, we have a plan. We have a partial plan, I think, in October. And then Mark will talk to us in November. In December, we'll talk about wild seed collection. These are some of the in-person things that we have planned. I don't know if we are going to get our plantings done in April, but we are trying to work out the details and get coordination in Phoenixville to have some things, some projects ready in April. We are definitely going to Jaja's place in Doylestown on Thursday, April 14th. Please email me and let me know that you would like to come. Otherwise, you're not going to get our address and you won't get to find it. Doylestown's a big place, so you're going to want to know where you're going. We're going there to figure out how she is managing her land, converting it to natives and battling invasives. Some dates there about native plant sales. We have a member that's going to have a table at the Berks County Conservation Celebration that's happening somewhere out Reading Way. The Lancaster Native Plant and Wildlife Festival, we've got those mentioned. The Hawk Mountain Native Plant Sale was around that date last year. They still have not announced it. I checked again today, so I'm not sure when they'll be holding it. We are meeting May 19th at Stoneleigh to get a presentation by Ethan Kaufman and Designing with Native Plants, and then we'll take a tour of Stoneleigh, which is, if you've never been there, it's gorgeous. We have the opportunity to have a guided tour at Bowman's Hill for $15 a person on Saturday, May 28th. It's a 10-person minimum, so you have to email me and let me know that you're interested in that. Otherwise, we're going to lose that opportunity. So just let me know, because I know that's kind of a lot of days right in a row where things are going on, or weekends, and people are busy with lots of opportunities. So let me know. We'll put it together if we get the people. And then Saturday, June 4th, we are going on a guided tour to the Bowers, which is the home of the newly established Central PA chapter. It's in Shermansdale, PA. So that's very exciting. Oh, there, I did put it on. The July 30th will be our Bondsville Mill Park tour and picnic. I hope everybody can meet us there. I was there over the weekend to help them because they are putting in several native plantings, and they are creating this really great amphitheater. So I was there helping them battle invasives, and it was really exciting. I look forward to seeing the progress that they make, because they're really they're trying to start essentially from scratch. So it'll be fun. By the time we are there in July, I think things are really going to look great. And then we still have an Octorara farm tour to schedule for later in the year. So lots of great stuff. I like to include this at the end of each meeting. These are the native plant nurseries in our area. Take advantage of them. Buy everything from all of them. Make sure they stay in business. They are growing things the right way, and they're growing the right plants, and we need to support them. Do I even need to go to the next one? And then this is just our become a member. If you're not a member already, tell your friends to become members and learn about native plants, and then you can create corridors like Erin's doing and help us save the world. Susan, I'm going to open the chat, or do I need to, I think when I open it, everybody sees it. So I don't know. Rick, I agree. I want to make t-shirts, and we've had a couple people submit ideas for like a logo or a slogan. With all the other things that we've been doing, we've kind of lost track of the t-shirt thing, but I agree. I think we should proudly display that we are SEPA Wild Ones.
Especially with all these native plant sales going on that we're all going to be at for the next 2 months.
Yep. Let's see. Yes, Shannon, I will right after this try and send you that stuff. Although it is on our website, the conference flyer is on our website now.
I think it's probably easier if you email it, just because people who can't post on the website can't extract the PDF easily.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes, Shannon, I will try and do that as soon as I get off here.
I saw it somewhere cross-posted on Facebook as well.
Yeah. So my husband is our biggest supporter, and he has spread the message far and wide about this conference. Oh, I wanted to put it in this presentation. He also sponsored us at another event. He got us a table And I'm not bragging. I am totally bragging. He also got me dinner with Doug Tallamy, and I'm so excited. I am so excited. Not just me alone. Like he'll be there also.
Right.
Others will pay because it's a fundraiser, but he got me that gift for Valentine's Day, and that's the best gift I've ever gotten. So
Is that the talk that Talamy's giving, and then there's a reception afterwards? Is that one in Westchester?
it is near Westchester.
Yeah, there it is.
In Westchester. So it's
We
a
have that on the website.
It's like a
Yeah, that'd
garden
be great.
conference or something. Yeah, I'm really excited. So the conference is mostly about like horticultural gardening, and then here our wild ones table is going to be there, wrecking havoc probably, but also
Probably.
yeah, it's definitely telling them you should invite wildlife in. It's really fun. So that's really exciting. Okay, I think that's everything, guys. Am I missing anything? Do you have anything you want to share? Let me, so I can see everybody's face. I need to stop sharing.
Jesse, I think Erin wanted some advice about plants that she can recommend for the pollinator corridor, really attractive to butterflies.
Yeah, so Erin, like we tell everybody, we always want to try and cover full seasons of blooms. So if you can get some early, and you were talking about 5 plants. So if you can hit 5 plants, 1 from each season, that's a good place to start. If you look at the flats that are available and see what resources you can pull together and see how many you could purchase that then you could divvy up among everybody, that might be an economical way to get more plants for more people. But things like golden alexanders early in the year, and then hit your asters. Not everybody wants goldenrods in their front yard as much as I love them. That may be one to stay away from, especially because it'll volunteer anyways. If you just stop mowing, it'll get there. But asters, everybody loves purple flowers, so asters are always a safe bet. I think. What else, guys, in the middle? Joe Pyeweed, my favorite.
Mountain mints.
Mountain mints.
Yeah.
Yes. Mountain mints, and that's bang for your buck because you buy 1, you get 72, and then you can divide it and spread your corridor.
Well, and how about blue mist flower? I mean, the first question I had, Erin, was what's the soil and the exposure like? Because if people have wet soil or people have dry soil, they are going to need different plants. So it would be nice if everybody would choose either to have a dry sunny spot or a dry shady spot, or people need sort of the same kind of spot anywhere in their yard. And then, yes, you can just get 5 flats of plants, divide them up, and it should work great.
And really, all of those plants that we just listed are pretty tolerant. They're going to do sun or even part shade. They need some hours of sunlight. And they're going to go moist to normal soil. So as long as they're not planting in a shady desert, you're probably going to have success with those easy plants. Right, Susan? Like those are pretty safe bet plants.
I agree. Right. Mountain mint, blue mist flower, conoclinium, that's easy. Joe Pye, I don't have any experience with because of the deer. But you shouldn't have deer right in the middle of Phoenixville, close to the road. Is that right? Erin, you don't really have a deer problem?
We have a huge deer problem.
Okay. Well, Zezia should be
I've got
fine.
A 6-foot fence, but there's a big deer population through Phoenixville.
Okay, then I live with deer all the time. So if it lives in my yard, I think it should survive in your yard. So Jacob's ladder, Pollinator, blue mist flower, conoclinium, the mountain mints, any of them. Joe Pye, I'm afraid they eat it in my yard. I don't know that they'll eat it in yours. And the goldenrods, you can get shorter goldenrods, like blue stem goldenrod is shorter and it also does part shade. So that's not the 6-foot tall Canada goldenrod stuff that we have.
Or golden fleece. I know that it's a cultivar, but I believe is a naturally occurring cultivar. Stays smaller. It's actually has an evergreen rosette that is very attractive even right now. Can do part shade. Like it's a pretty rock solid goldenrod that does not spread too aggressively because it's not rhizomatous, however you want to say that word.
Which one is that?
It's golden fleece. I think it's
yeah.
biculata or something that sounds similar to that.
And I think North Creek has that one too. I've seen it.
Probably. I'm newly in love with that one. I really like it. And I have lots of goldenrod varieties, so I didn't feel too terrible picking up that one cultivar for a spot that it could, do well in.
Right.
I love ironweed also. Ironweed tends to be a large plant, so it may be hard for people in their front yards, but it's a beard tongue is another great one that does stay small. It's lovely. Sometimes it doesn't live as long as I want it to, but it usually self-seeds. So I definitely say try it. I really like it.
Agreed.
Susan, how does Monarda do in your yard with the deer?
They leave it alone, but it gets huge. They absolutely leave it alone. I have fistulosa. I have didyma. They don't touch it. They're fine.
And that's another one that keeps on giving. Like you put one in and it'll keep going.
It does. So it's not very well behaved. If you're going to do a bed, particularly in the front, that wouldn't be one that I would choose. I think it's a little aggressive.
I've got Monarda and Hoary Mountain Mint, and the two of them are just constantly covered all summer long.
Yep. And the fun thing I learned about Monarda is that it's one of the few plants that produces nectar all day, like it replenishes all day, whereas some plants are more likely to produce in the morning, but then they stop. So Monarda, that's why you see it all day long, because it's putting out juices all day long.
Nice. Oh, gray-headed coneflower is another, I think, relatively well behaved, and it blooms for a long season. Retibita pinnata, I think, gray-headed coneflower.
Well, that's very tall.
Yeah.
You want a tall one.
Mine are about 2.5 feet tall.
Oh, mine are 4 feet.
Maybe I have a dwarf.
But you also have dry, rocky soil, right, Susan? So I bet you it stays better behaved in those conditions because of the stress, whereas moister, more rich soil might tend to make it leggy and flop.
That's definitely a possibility. I do have thin soil. Yeah, this says 3 to 5. Mine are definitely on the 3 side.
Mine are
I've never seen.
Yeah.
So I have a miniature version.
That sounds lovely. Mine are lovely when they flop over on the ground. I don't care. Evening primroses are lovely also, but they tend to, it depends which type. I guess there's 2 evening primrose that are native to this area, and one gets pretty big and the other one I think stays smaller. I don't know enough about that one to speak to it.
Word, dear.
Butterfly weed, guys, stays relatively small.
Yeah, and for a drier site, and as long as you don't look at it too hard, it'll do really great. Pay it too much attention and it wants to die immediately. But yeah, it likes to be ignored in like drier soil for sure.
I like my agastache.
Agastache is good, right? Lots and lots of flowers. That can get tall though. For me, it gets about 4 feet tall.
It gets, well, mine stays 3 feet and bushy, 3 feet and bushy.
I will say they don't flop. They might get tall,
and they don't flop.
Right.
In full sun.
And they like to read too. So that's another, I like plants that keep giving, but sometimes
they keep giving.
No, it's good.
Wild geranium's another really good one. I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, grasses to the mix, right? Side oats, grandma, they're beautiful. Little blue stem, love it. So it depends how big your beds are, but for sure, if you can, grasses really help. Yes, our native strawberries, Fragaria virginium, I watched a presentation by Mount Cuba, who it was an edible landscapes presentation, and he had recommended doing a lawn conversion with Fragaria, because it's semi-evergreen. It feeds so many insects. It holds its own. It spreads really nicely. It's a great ground cover. I was in love with that idea. The problem is, go find it. Like, you can't find it. Nobody sells it. It's really hard to get your hands on. So if you find it, let me know.
I found it at Edge of the Woods last
Yeah,
summer,
me too.
but not too much of it.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, anytime, snatch it up, because if you have a few plants, they will grow over time.
Yeah, they took over the hill behind my house, which was great. They spread.
Yeah. Excellent.
Oh, and don't forget ground plants that cover the ground under all of these flowering plants that we're talking about.
Yeah.
If they don't bush out and cover, like the conoclinium and the mountain mint, you want something underneath them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think sedges are really good for that too.
Yeah,
I love sedges.
Yes.
Mhm.
Now you've memorized the list of 40 plants they've just given you for the 5 that you really wanted, right?
Right.
I wrote down the first 5 I wanted.
Out in the chat too. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to sort it out because there are so many that you want and so many that fit with the site conditions. You just want to grow them all.
Right.
So we should.
I did that.
Yeah, we should grow them all.
He does too.
Aaron, we have to take a tour of your front yard and the conversion that you've done there, because it is inspiring.
It's a mess.
That's really kind of inspiring,
No,
girl.
it's only March.
What's that?
It's only March.
Oh, I know. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with it. But the trees are doing great. Except for the tree that you gave me, Jesse. That got eaten. Not all of it. It's still there, but a lot of it.
My back, you say? Oh, it got eaten.
Deer. They come through my front yard, not my backyard.
What was it, Aaron? What kind?
It was a catalpa.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh
But
well, if you tree tubes when they're little, right? Protection.
it's funny because they left all the other trees, but they ate every single branch off of that one.
Oh,
Poplar when they're little. Yeah.
there's also definitely hope that it will come back, because they can be pretty tenacious. So
Yeah.
it'll just get bushier. It'll be a nice shrub.
So Aaron, how did you remove the grass from your lawn when you did the conversion?
So I don't know if I did this correctly, but what I did was I covered the lawn with cardboard and then convinced the burrow to drop chips.
I've done that. That works
Until
great.
I got in trouble.
Yeah.
So they would drive up with a forklift, front end loader, I'm sorry, and drop a ton of chips for me
I love it.
until they got caught. And then they were like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. So I now have another wood chip source, and I started the backyard.
Yeah, so that works really well. I was going to say in the newsletter this month, which will come out in a couple days, there are going to be several articles on different ways to convert various sizes of lawn to sort of complement what, oh gosh, what was her name? What our presenter said today as well. There are other ways, and that's a really good strategy, is cardboard and chips, or just if the burrow will do it, have them just cover your front lawn with leaves, which I did one time. And it worked great. Sat there all fall. In the spring, I had beautiful soil. There's ways to be creative about it without the herbicides.
Yeah, so I did ask my neighbors for leaves. So I
Mhm.
put leaves into my backyard.
I have gone around and collected bags of leaves. We probably have all done that
Yeah.
at some point.
The leaf thief.
Yeah, if other people aren't going to use them, we might as well.
I put a message out on Nextdoor. that basically said, have you done all the hard work to clean up your leaves and your yard looks spotless and immaculate now? I will come and rescue all of the butterflies that you just put in a bag and I'll bring them to my house. And I had people who were like, yeah, sure, come on and pick them up. So I would get dozens of bags. I just had to drive around and collect them.
That's great. I'll have to do it earlier this year. One of the other things that I did is I started putting my eggs out right in the front of my house and offered them to people right next to the Watersheds Conservancy sign. So
Lure them in with eggs like candy. That is brilliant. And you'll teach them while they, yes, come on, little kids, I'll give you eggs and teach you something.
right.
That's wonderful. That is just great.
It's fun.
It's too bad the chickens can't root around in the leaves. But Jesse, I think you're right that they're probably going to eat too much and they're going to just turn up too much soil and encourage too many weeds. But they're very efficient grass destroyers.
Yeah.
They are.
And they also eat Japanese beetles. I have a chicken who I could aim like a little gun. I could like hold her at the Japanese beetles and she would.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, cool.
Jesse, I put one on top of a tree and she eats every Japanese beetle in there.
You have to post videos of that.
I think I have, but I will post more.
They're great.
They can also be trained to eat those the lantern flies.
So mine wouldn't
Oh, really?
do that. I haven't trained them, but I offered them up and they were like, no, thank you.
Huh.
Donna, I am really sad to hear that you are supposed to be getting 6 to 12 inches of snow.
In Western PA.
Oh gosh.
So unfortunate.
It'll melt quickly.
That's true.
Yeah, it's not like January snow.
So tree tubes, Rick, where do I know you can get tree tubes? You can,
Octoraro.
Octoraro, if we put together an order from there, you can get tree tubes. They only do bulk sales, so you can't as like an individual reach out to them, but we have been tossing around, we've been tossing around the idea of having an Octoraro order, and it has to be open to the public now. So I'm sure we could come up with enough tree tubes. You have to have, they have to be in sets of 5.
Okay.
At least 5 or 10 or 15 tree tubes.
Did I read that somebody has a retail space next to or adjacent to Octoraro's nursery?
They do. It's Groff's.
Right.
They are a retail nursery. They do not guarantee that their plants are neonic free. So you won't find them on the neonic free list because of that.
Okay.
It's most likely that a lot of their plants are neonic free, especially because
They're coming from
right, but they can't guarantee that all of their plants are, and they have a lot of non-native plants, so they're hit and miss. So I just want you to know that. I'm not saying don't go there. I'm just being an informed retail consumer, know to look out for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So any chance they would have tree tubes?
I doubt they have tree tubes, but they might. I don't know. They have a very large selection of native and non-native plants, mostly non-native, but they have a lot of natives too.
You can make tree tubes from 5-foot fencing. If you just get a roll of fencing at Home Depot, pair of wire clippers, tin snips, then you can make them as wide or narrow as you want, depending on what you're planting, which is nice.
That's
Has
what we
anyone noticed
did.
that fencing and a hardware cloth has
What
taken,
kind of
like,
fencing?
even before all this, went through the roof this year?
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Because I did a lot of winter sowing and I got hardware cloth to cover them up with. And I was like, wow, this is much more expensive than it was the last time I looked at it.
oh, bummer. Yeah, I haven't bought it in a while. Boy, that's too bad.
But yeah, I like that idea, Susan. And I may just end up doing that, biting the bullet and making them myself.
You could try Free Cycle if anybody has fencing that they're trying to move. Sometimes farmers, farmers have fencing and it's too old and beat up for them.
Yeah, I've picked up lots of fencing from people's driveway that they were just throwing away.
Yeah, I got a ton of chicken wire at Restore this year, just because I saw it and I knew what it was going for these days. Picked it up for like it's a huge roll of it.
Right, how tall?
It was like 4 foot.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect.
Or you could even wire it together to make it taller because that stuff is so flexible. You can just bend it with your hands.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds like a good find.
Get the T-posts, the taller T-posts. Yeah, that would work.
Right. We'll make it work, right? Well, Kelsey, thank you for your presentation. It was great. Very informative.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you guys again for having me. I've been super inspired just by like all of the chatter and like hearing about all the cool like projects you guys are doing. It's super cool. I'm like, man, I want to live in southeastern PA now.
Well, you are in Carlisle, right? So the South Central.
Not too far.
Bowers.
What's that?
Have you heard of the Bowers? It's a preserve.
Yeah, so I know Bill and Jane Ellis. Yeah.
So she started up, or maybe they, but I know her name, started up the Central or South Central chapter of Wild Ones. So they, I think, have close to 20 members already. They're just newly chartered within the last month or two. So that might be a great resource for you to reach out to, more plant nerds, the better.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird because I think within like a week, we also established a brand new Native Plant Society chapter down here. And I had no idea that they were doing it at the same time. So I'm like, oh, okay, we need to like talk about this. I think the intents are different, so I think we're going to be fine.
Lehigh Valley one or the Lancaster County one?
So this one's brand new. We're calling it the Great Valley chapter. So it's covering, it does have some overlap with the South Central Wild Ones chapter. But yeah, I really need to like talk to Bill and be like, hi, I didn't know you guys were doing this too. Sorry.
I don't think that it's not competition. It's all like collaboration and it's sharing knowledge. Yeah, we are great fits. Like some of our members are PA Native Plant Society members. Also, Chad Clem, who sits on the board for PA Native Plant Society, is one of our members and one of our greatest advocates. In fact, he was the one who recommended us for the Philly Home and Garden Show, which was so exciting because we got to speak to so many people who didn't know anything about native plants on the spectrum to working towards converting lawn already and just wanted some ideas about which plants to put in. So it was a great time. We talked to hundreds of people, gave out hundreds of seed packets of native plants, and collected, I'm not sure if I said this during the meeting, over 120 email addresses to add to our newsletter. So they're going to be getting all of these great tips and all of that. So our newsletter goes out to over 500 people now. So they get these all of this information at their fingertips that the rest of us had to like paw and struggle for over years. They just get it spoon fed to them in their email. It's so perfect. Hopefully jump starts them, down the road that they can get plants in the ground.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking with Bill and Jane just to like hear what they're up to, because I've seen like a couple of their like activities that they already have planned for the year, and it looks really cool. So I'm really excited. I think it's going to be definitely like a cool like little collaboration like across the two like groups. So yeah, it was just like weird because it was just like, wait, we both were like thinking about it and did it at the same time. It was really weird.
Yeah, well, the more native plant groups we get out there, the better, man. We are gonna take over the world.
I think so. I hope so.
People are really looking for that information. People are looking for, well, if I'm not supposed to have a lawn, how do I, literally go out this weekend and start to do it differently? And that's what I think we'd like to provide that. And you provided a lot of that too, on the ground information.
I think that's a really good point. It's again, we have all of this like tools and knowledge. We know how to maintain a lawn. We can go to Lowe's and just pick up whatever we need. So it's like, okay, how do we start to change that so that those tools are more accessible so that we can effectively feed people, treat them like little baby birds and get them to do something different. It's slow.
Right? So that's why we show all of these nurseries that you can go to and start this process, because if you're used to a turf grass lawn and you're used to going to Home Depot, you can't do that anymore. So what do you do?
Where do you go?
Yeah, where do you go? What do you do? And then you think you know where you go, or one time Lowe's will have like an Arrowwood viburnum and you're like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. Look, there's a native plant here. And then you know enough to know, okay, how's it grown? Like, are there neonics? Was it poisoned before it got here? Am I going to put it in the ground and it's going to kill everything that comes to eat it because of, so the next step after we like take over this ground force of people with knowledge and demands of native plants is to infiltrate these big box stores and have them grow things the right way from local growers, get ecotypes that are local to us in there, and cover the world in native plants. So
we're going to need to infiltrate the Pennsylvania Landscape Society, right? PLNA. Yeah.
Working on it.
Yeah. Oh, good. Good. You got good ideas?
I have no idea if I have good ideas, but
yeah. I mean,
I got the connections.
Okay. Those guys are entrenched, and that's where they grow for Home Depot.
Well, they will grow. I want them to grow. I just want them to grow the right things the right way. Like, I'm not saying don't grow.
Oh no, we are creating a huge market for them. They just need to understand how big this market is and convert from raising sterile versions of Japanese barberry to giving us what we want.
Sterile that's not going to stay sterile.
Right.
Sterile was in air quotes. If we're saying, people in the chat are saying, I can't find Fragaria virginiana anywhere. Well, that's what they need to grow for us because we need it and we can't find it and we will buy it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That could be top of the list of, hey, drop the barberry and grow this.
Oh, we could have a top 20 list of native plants that we can't find enough of. Like, I don't know, nannyberry is really hard to find. There's a whole list of good natives that you can't even get your hands on the way you can get your hands on 15 different echinacea cultivars at Home Depot.
Right.
We should work on a top 25 list.
That would be great. Like not this, but this. Yeah.
Right. We already have plant this, not that. But what we need is grow this, not that for us, for the nurserymen.
Right.
Oh, let's do that. Let's do grow this, not that. Holy.
Like spirea, not Spirea japonica, Spirea alba.
Right, which is hard to find. You're right.
Yeah, something like that.
Alba tomentosa. What a great idea. Okay.
Maybe.
I love this idea and I want to move forward with it. My only concern is we need to involve our local small nurseries so that they are aware too. We don't want to cut into their market. We want to expand the places, right? So we want to make sure we're not giving a list of things that they're working on that they plan to come out with because they're expanding because they the market.
It would have to be gradual. You have to sell off all the stuff that they shouldn't be selling, but they had to sell it anyway. And then get to the good stuff.
Just plug Native Trees Go Native in Lancaster. I picked up a few really wonderful native trees there.
They have good prices too. I was looking at them last week. I was amazed at the prices of those trees.
And the quality is really great. Like they're small, but their root systems are amazing. That one picture I showed that it looked like I put sticks in the ground and 3 months later they were like full. Those were native beauty berries.
Mm-hmm.
And the root system on them were just fantastic. But when I picked them up, they were a single stick. They all looked dead. They just took off like, and the bonus was you couldn't tell in that picture.
Did you get that from Go Native?
Yeah. But I think I picked up 8 from them. and in 6 of the pots, there is a really unique native vine that was growing in the pots. It germinated, you know, sometime in late summer. That was like a bonus. And so I have this awesome late season flowering vine with these shrubs, and I can't remember what it's called. It's nothing that's sold. It's just a native, you know, like wild thing that nobody grows to sell, but it gets a really cool, like pea-like flower. It's late season, summer blooming. Like I was super tickled. I was like, what is this? But then it was only growing with each of these shrubs. I was like, that's so cool. They were hitchhiking probably in the soil, but because they're growing all their own stuff, like the chances that it was native were really high. And then my plant identifier said that it was this, and I confirmed with somebody else, and I would tell you the name if I could remember it, but I can't. So I hope that I get more of those vines, because vines are a great way to fill in those bloom,
Great.
you know, when your shrub's done, but you know, something else. It's just another layer.
So cool. You just got to be careful with the hitchhikers. We had planted penstemon, and we got it from a local nursery, a local native plant nursery that grows their own stock. And we had arthraxin in the soil. Are you guys familiar with arthraxin?
Yeah. Like
It is a nasty, nasty invasive weed. And we ended up introducing it like along with our penstemon. So we had to like go out once we realized it, we had to like go to each individual penstemon that we had planted, which was like 4 dozen, and like look for the arthraxin and like pluck them out. And now we have to do that like every year to make sure. So be careful with hitchhikers.
Okay.
For sure.
Usually they're good.
I was fortunate. And it's not groundnut. That's a great question. I do have groundnut. It's not groundnut. I will figure it out and tell you at some point.
I wonder what it is.
Yeah, it was something I'd never heard of before that I was like, oh, this can't be native. I don't know what it is. Not that I know every native, but you know what I mean? It's not something that's sold, so I just never learned it. And I obviously didn't remember it. Butterfly pea, I know that's not it either. It's some weird thing, like obscure something.
So was that Go Native Tree Farm or a different one?
Go Native. They're over in the county.
I'm only seeing that they have hickories and chestnuts.
Yeah. Their website is a little goofy to try and find their inventory. Yeah. You have to poke around a little bit, but then you download the list.
Oh, okay.
And the list is really nice because it tells you the prices, it tells you the size, but it also says need tuta fruit or need some certain special condition, or like they have little comments that kind of tell you if it's a good idea or not.
And also when you guys, if you email them and describe your site conditions to them and just kind of tell them, you know, I want to plant hickories, I have dry, sunny slope, you know, which ones? And they will email you back and tell you.
Yeah, they have been nothing but fantastic. I told them one year that I was looking for sweet fern because nobody was carrying it. And they were like, I'll get you sweet fern. And then a month went by and I was like, hey, how about that sweet fern? They're like, nobody's selling it. You're right. How about bare root? Would you be okay with bare root? And I was like, yeah, I'm down. Go ahead. So they gave me 12 bare roots for $3 a piece. Sweet fern.
Tonya.
Wow.
Yeah. So the next year, a few nurseries had it, and they're going for like $24, $25 for, you know, a gallon, you know, 2-quart, that middle-sized pot, $25. Where now all of them have grown from my bare root. I paid change.
$3 a piece.
Like they were just so great.
I think we
I
just
did
need to
find
be
the
our
price
own
list. Thank you.
Wild One SEPA nursery. We'll grow our own stuff.
Yeah, we could.
Would love it. I need to become independently wealthy so I can do those fun things. Your dog's so cute, Kelsey.
He's hungry. He's really adorable. Actually, he came from oh my gosh, National Greyhound Adoption Program down in Philly.
Oh.
He's not a greyhound. He's a terrier.
Susan, are you looking at the prices?
Oh.
What do you think? I was sort of blown. Well, I guess I'm just sort of used to like Philadelphia native nursery pricing.
Yeah.
You
He
know,
does it by the foot, doesn't he?
but he prices out the gallon pot, the gallon per gallon sizes, right? So there's like 1 gallon, 2 gallon, 3 gallon containers.
I just know I've gotten
Ah,
some
here.
really, like, I was trying to find a native crab apple.
Well, I got some of those from them.
Yeah, so did I. I'm really happy about it. And a few other things that I was looking for that he has. He's growing, I think, like a ton of species, probably too many.
There's a lot here.
There's a lot
Yeah.
there. There's
A
7
lot of them
pages.
are small,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, you're right. There's like tons of hickories. There's more buckeyes than I knew existed. Yeah, this is nice.
So I tried to get my sister into native plants, and I took her first to Hungry Hook Farm. If you've never been there, she's a small grower. She hand collects seeds. She grows all of her own stuff. She's amazing. Her prices are really great. Her location is like super cute. There's a meadow. It's all these great educational signs. It's like the perfect place to go visit and learn about native plants. And she's so lovely to talk to. Her name's Sherry. And so that was our first stop. And my sister had never been to a native plant nursery. So she was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Look how cool. I'm learning all these things. There's pictures of butterflies and there's butterflies flying around. And it's so amazing. And then we drove over to Go Native Tree Farm to pick up some stuff I had already ordered. Completely different. Like, you pretty much have to know how to identify a tree or a shrub because nothing's labeled. Like, everything's alphabetical. So if you know the two plants on either side of the one you're looking at, and you know your alphabet and your botanical names well enough, you can probably figure out what that one is. But my sister was like, how do you know what anything is? I was like, well, I know what that one is. And I know what that one is. And alphabetically, this one should be like, so she was like, that's just crazy. I said, but they know. So I could always ask them. But yeah, this was such a fun spectrum to show her of how nurseries are and what the experience can be like. And I'm glad it happened in that order. Otherwise, she might have been completely thrown off.
Yeah.
Yes, both of the witch hazel, spring and fall, and it's hard to find both of them.
Huh.
This is
Yeah.
nice. I have to go.
Bonsville Mill Park has their vernal witch hazel in full bloom right now. Holy cow.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Like,
How big is it?
they're fairly small. They're probably only 4 feet at most. They're not full grown yet at all, but almost glowing chartreuse. Beautiful.
I wish.
Oh, wow.
Drive by, stop your car and look. Beautiful. Like, very eye-catching.
Oh,
I wonder what kind of a site it is because I had trouble growing it.
Where they have it both, it's part shade. Part shade, probably moist soil because they're kind of at the bottom of a stream runoff. I have both types. My vernal is blooming now, but my leaves don't drop off. So I have the full bloom, but I have my old leaves. What, marchescence is that? I think that's that term.
I
So
had that happen. Yeah.
they're not as like eye-catching as the ones down there where all their leaves have dropped and just every branch is covered with tons and tons of blooms. My non the vernal, the other one, Virginiana, is too young to have bloomed yet. So I'll let you know how that one comes along. I've got like 6 of them in the ground, but they're too young.
I just need to get more. I don't have the right soil. You need actual soil, not rock. Dang it.
I know.
I'll make it work.
Oh my gosh, guys, it's been a ton of
Okay.
fun. Now I see all these
Yeah.
doggies, so I have to go rescue mine. They've been waiting so patiently. So
Yep.
it was a great night. I will talk to you all later.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. It was
Good
great.
to see everybody.
Chelsea.
Good night.
Thank you guys. Good night.
Thanks. Get over here.